folks? We're going to hit it.
We're ready. Alrighty.
Good evening. It's 5:30 on Wednesday, May 18th, and I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Education. Ms. Stoicoy, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Coco?
Here.
Mr. Gomez?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Ms. Schaefer? Here. Ms. White?
Here.
Item B, number 1, motion to approve the agenda. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the agenda of the May 18th, 2022 regular Board of Education meeting. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of the consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion unless a member of the Board of Education, treasurer, or superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Welcome. Welcome to our retirees who are able to make it tonight so that we can celebrate you. To the many people presenting tonight, welcome to you, and to our top Tigers and their families. Thank you all for being here tonight. Our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City Schools, the hub of our community, committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity. Informational items. This meeting is a meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must complete a registration form found inside the attendance notebook and present it to the treasurer. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the meeting agenda, they must notify the superintendent and/or board president of the topic no later than 3 business days in advance of the meeting. These individuals may share their comments during the board business portion of the agenda. In both cases, comments will include their name and address of the individual and be limited to 3 minutes. In addition, in public session, the board will not hear complaints about school personnel nor against any person connected with the school system. An unabridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device at the address shown on the screen, and for your convenience, hard copies of the board agenda may be found at the librarian's desk. The next regularly scheduled board meeting is June 1st, 2022 here at the high school library at 5:30 p.m. A board construction project work session is scheduled for tomorrow, May 19th, here in the library at 6 p.m., and a business advisory council meeting is scheduled for May 24th, 2022 at 8 a.m. in the Board of Education meeting room. Now for our Pledge of Allegiance and positive reflections, Mrs. Schaefer.
Please stand as you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and for my positive reflection for this evening, I chose one of my favorite quotes from Mahatma Gandhi. It is, keep your words positive because your words become your behavior. Keep your behavior positive because your behavior becomes your habits. Keep your habits positive because your habits become your values. Keep your values positive because your values become your destiny.
Thank you. Item G, presentations. The first one tonight is our staff recognition, retirees. Mrs. McClark.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just thrilled to be able to present our retirees and even more thrilled to find my list. There we go. So we had about a dozen retirees throughout the school year this year. I wanted to list our folks who were not able to join us first, and then we'll be able to recognize our people who are with us tonight. Retiring as the building secretary from Bullock Middle School with 33 years of service, Mrs. Deborah Kane was not able to join us tonight. Retiring from the maintenance department with 22 years of service, Mark Campana. Retiring from Cuyahoga Falls High School as the guidance secretary with 21 years of service, Dee Madonia. Retiring from our central office, our superintendent of 11 years, Dr. Todd Nichols, left us in December. Retiring from Cuyahoga Falls High School, one of our cleaners with 38 years of service, Lorraine Ruppel. And retiring from Bolig Middle School, one of our wonderful teachers, Pam Schindler, with 16 years of service. So we have some folks that are going to be speaking on behalf of some of our retirees. So I'm going to start. Our first retiree is Kathy Ader. She is from Roberts Middle School with 22 years of service, and speaking on her behalf is her daughter, Jamie Bai. And Jamie's here. I saw her. There she is. And Chris Geyer's coming on up too, apparently. Come on up. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Geyer, principal at Roberts, and I've worked with Kathy for only 4 years, so I thought for sure her daughter wouldn't want to go first. No, I'm kidding. But what I can share with you is that in my 4 years with Kathy, I've learned what a lot of people had many more years to see, and that is she has a heart of gold. And she really is one of those human beings that until you get to meet her, you won't get the real Kathy. You get a part of Kathy, and Mrs. Ader is a fantastic teacher, and she's a fantastic educator to small people. But once you meet her, she has an impact on you that you just can't forget. Whether it's her wit or a joke that sometimes could be inappropriate, she just has such a way to impact you on a personal level that in my 4 years with her, I feel like I've known her my entire career here in Falls, which is 14 years. She's just one of those people that she's lived here, she breathes black and white, or black and tigers colors, and she wants to make a positive impact. And although she's retiring, it's not because she burned out, it's not because she felt like she was done, it's because she was just ready to move on. And that's a good thing. Sometimes in education, when you serve other people, you have to make an executive decision that it's time for someone else to give it a go. And so although I feel like 4 years was a lot of fun, I wish I had a couple more, because like I said, she has really good jokes, and she can always make a room laugh. But she's going to be missed. And so we look forward to moving on and doing our best to make sure that we can keep the success that we can see in her room go on. We'll just be sad that it won't have her bulletin boards and all of her pretty artwork up on the walls with it.
That was great. My mom wanted to say thank you to the district. She's going to miss everyone here, and yeah, that's it. She's going to enjoy her grandkids. She wanted me to tell her.
Our next retiree is one of our administrative assistants in central office, Connie Brandon. Connie, would you want to come on up? So I was given some information about Connie to read to all of you tonight. So this is from her supervisor, Mrs. Chris Shaw. So she says Connie has served the Cuyahoga Falls City Schools for these past several years with sincere commitment, conscientiousness, and professional integrity. As we endured COVID and all that resulted in for education, Connie responsibly worked remotely or in person as circumstances allowed without any reservation. She has taken pride in our district, our student services department, and the support she shows our staff and community. Thank you, Connie, for the time you have devoted as an invested, contributing member of our staff. Enrollment just will not be the same without you. Thank you so much. Would you like to say a few words? Our next retiree is a teacher at Silver Lake Elementary School with 23 years of service, Peggy Pellegra. Peggy, come on up. And speaking on behalf of Peggy are Mrs. Kate Beck, Mrs. Fallon Miller, and her principal, Mrs. Hillary Freitag Geiger. Come on up. Let's hear what they have to say.
Good evening. Peggy. We've taught for almost 30 years. We have shared many great years. by your side, and it's been an honor. You truly had a calling for teaching. That's for sure. Your positive attitude, your creativity, and flair for the perfect touches, and your energy makes you an exceptional teacher.
You always knew how to interest your students, even the most challenging. You have always shown a lot of patience with those who were, let's say, high maintenance, as if you were aiming to change the course of their outcome, and you succeeded. You took out class library book sets to inspire your students to have a love for reading. You created activities that challenged your most difficult and gifted students. From time to time, we would pass students in the hallway creating and doing something different from the rest of the class.
We know that you will never forget the sound of the morning bells, the never-ending, Mrs. Pellegra, Mrs. Pellegra, Mrs. Pellegra, the shouts of tattling on the playground, the confiscation of numerous things that our students tried to hide from us, such as tulle from a skirt, in one instance, which was later used as spitballs. Or the time where one creative student decorated your classroom with a permanent marker.
Mrs. Whitcomb might remember that, yeah. Many of us looked forward to what color your classroom would be each year. We know how much enthusiasm you had as you designed your curtains to match the rest of your room. As Mrs. Watson says, your room was absolutely beautiful and well organized. Your room was such a happy place for us to come in each morning for our daily talks. We will miss our mornings when we would share stories about our children and weekends. Peggy, you are such a role model for so many reasons. You always look for the good in everything you do, while always looking good, wearing your ever so lovely Lily Pulitzer, is that how you say it? Did I say that right? Clothes. I respect the way you are ending your teaching career. Like it is your very first year, the first one to get to school, and the last one to leave.
We're all sad about your departure, but happy at the same time to know that you will enjoy a quiet and well-deserved retirement. We know the joy you will find watching your grandbaby and traveling with Dave. Some things that you have earned.
You can go to the bathroom whenever you want.
You can leave the air conditioning on all day, not just for 30-minute intervals.
You don't have to wear your jammies backwards or flush ice cubes down the toilet.
No more salon visits for lice.
No more tying a wet shoelace after bathroom break.
This is what we do on a daily basis. Do we get a raise? And most importantly, no more Zoom meetings. The influence of a good teacher can never be erased. Retirement means that it is time for a new adventure. Let the recess begin.
We love you, Peggy Jo.
I would like to thank Cuyahoga Falls School District for all these years I've had. I kind of waited to start my career as a teacher. I raised our daughters first, and then I came in a little bit later in life. I've loved every minute of it. I wanted to be a teacher since I was a little girl, the teaching has been wonderful. The kids, I just have enjoyed working with them. The literature, the books, has always been my favorite thing. And not just the students, I love my colleagues, everybody I work with. I'm truly going to miss all of them. But I don't plan on being a stranger. I'm going to be back. They can't get rid of me that fast. But I am looking forward to my our first oldest daughter's having a child, so this will be my first grandchild. So we kind of made a deal. She says, "Mom, if you retire," no, she says, I want to have a baby, but you have to retire." So I put in my resignation. And I said, "Well, where's your end?" So she did live up to her end, and her baby's due August 24th, so very good. Great. But no, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Fallon and Kate, for those nice words. I love all of you.
had the privilege to be Mrs. Pellegra's principal for about 8 years, so, and every word they said is absolutely true, so. Okay. I'd like to bring up Judy Ray, who has served as the building secretary. She's been running Cuyahoga Falls High School for about 36 years. So we're so sad to see her leave, and Allison Bogdan, our high school principal, is going to say a few words for her.
No, she'll want your chair. You gotta listen to Mrs. Ray. You ready? Okay. Well, don't read it. Okay. Mrs. Judy Ray. So there are not enough words that can pay tribute to this woman, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Judy Ray, I'm going to give you her whole biography.
Your best is the best ever.
Okay, here we go. She loves me. Judy Ray started her career in the Falls as a secretarial sub in 1985 and gained a full-time position in 1986, where she has worked in guidance, athletics, and the main office until 2022. For those of you that are trying to do the math, that is 37 years. 37 years, sit on that. 37 years as the heart and soul of our Black Tiger family. For 37 years, we have been blessed by the presence of you, Mrs. Judy Ray. And during those 37 years, she has also volunteered, here we go, for the Richardson PTA from 1973 to 85, was an officer at BOE and CFHS on their PTAs, has been a member of the Paws and Maws Athletic Boosters since 1985, co-chaired the 1223 Basketball Classic from 2012 to 2014 that honors Kevin Humble and Lance Hackham, who died in an automobile accident, and whose proceeds from those 3 years went into a scholarship fund that provides 2 senior students a scholarship each year. She was named Cuyahoga Falls Citizen of the Year in 2017. Do we have any other Citizens of the Year? No, we don't. Judy Ray. Look at that. And this is my favorite. She was inducted into the Black Tiger Gridiron for service in 2018, the first female to be honored by this induction. Yes. So Judy Ray is the very definition of a Black Tiger, and those who speak and meet with her must think, this woman was born and raised and went through the Falls system. Surprisingly, she did not. She is actually a 1965 graduate of Central High School. She then went on and spent a year at the University of Akron and spent a couple of years in the U.S. Naval Office before marrying the absolute love of her life in 1966, William Ray, who she still refers to as my Bill. Unfortunately, he did die in 1997. Judy Ray and Bill have 3 children. Lisa, she's very, she made me say all these things about her children. She loves them so much. But I wanted to anyways. Okay. Judy Ray has 3 children. Lisa, who graduated from CFHS in '86 and is a nurse. Richard, who graduated in '88 and serves as a fire chief in Chillicothe, and his wife, Kristen, a surgeon. And Michelle, who graduated in 1992 and is an oral surgeon office manager. But if you really want to see her face light up, you only need to ask her about her grandchildren. Jacob, who is 17 and a junior at CFHS, and Quentin, age 10 in Chillicothe. You smiling?
Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who have never had the opportunity to personally know Judy Ray, I am so, so very sorry. There is nobody that has made a bigger difference or impact in the lives of all those she meets. You meet her, you love her. It's that simple. Judy Ray is selfless. She is generous like no other. I'm not talking about the hundreds of presents she purchased on a yearly basis over the holidays for current staff and even those that are no longer with us. If they retired, she would send it to their home. More importantly, I'm talking about her time and her heart. She is so in tune with the needs of others and spent countless hours lending her ear and guidance to student after student and staff member after staff member, including myself. There's nobody she didn't have time for and nobody she wasn't willing to help. She is the very definition of Black Tiger family and taught us all about love. Her email handle is Tiger Mom, and that is the role she played. She served as a second mother to so many people, sometimes their first and sometimes their preferred mother. That's funny. That's supposed to be a joke, no. Personally, I am pretty sure that Judy Ray served as the head principal of CFHS from 2014 to the present. Sometimes I would think to myself, as I listened to her outside my office, I'd think, I wonder if they're paying her to act like I am the principal, but really telling her that she is running the show. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, that's what they're doing. Somebody's paying. And to run the show, you did. There's not a question she couldn't answer or a challenge that she couldn't or didn't address. I never viewed her as my secretary. I saw her as my partner. Let me give you an example. There is not a teacher that has been hired in the last 10 years that Judy Ray did not interview. She was my secret weapon, as she greeted each potential candidate and casually asked them very probing questions. At the end of the evening, I would say, "Okay, Judy, let's hear it," and she would provide me feedback that sounded something like this. "Miss Bogdan, I don't know if it's my place, but so-and-so will not relate to our students, or so-and-so is not professional." That's if they didn't have a tie on. If you didn't have a tie on, you didn't get past Judy Ray. Or she would often say, "So-and-so is perfect for our Black Tiger family." Bottom line, if Judy Ray did not approve, you weren't making it to the next round. Those late nights, well beyond her contractual hours, were some of my best memories because I knew she was working just as hard as the interview committee to find the perfect person for our Black Tiger family. She just cared that much. By the way, I mentioned late nights. She took so much pride in making our school run. She was the first to arrive right past 6 a.m., making sure that we were ready for the day with what we needed and always the last to go. In this respect, Judy Ray was not a good listener, as I would beg her to go home and remind her of her official hours. Sometimes I would even have to pretend that I was leaving because I just wanted her to get some rest. I'd have to go to my car and take a ride around the block a couple times and make sure she got to her car and she would leave and then I'd come back. So in her own words, she said, this is a quote from Judy, 37 years have gone by so fast. I can honestly say I never dreaded going to work. CFHS has been my second home with my second family. My goal was to always try to be a safe haven for the students and staff. I always consider both students and staff as my kids. I always tried to make visitors feel welcome and respected. Who says that? Judy Ray says that. Judy Ray says that, and I can assure you that you did make this a safe haven, and we love you for that. Thank you so much. So Judy Ray, my very dearest friend, you were the Educator of the Year each and every one of the 37 years you spent with us. We learned more about educating our young adults from you than any class any of us ever took in college. You will be missed, but you are not leaving us because you have imprinted the biggest tiger paw on each and every one of our hearts, and your legacy will live on in each of us forever. So from this entire Black Tiger family, Black Tiger community, thank you so very much. We adore you, and I love you very much. Enjoy your retirement. You deserve it.
You wonder why I love working for her? Or let's say, working with her. We tried to keep it a team, as always. It is wonderful being here, first of all. You know, any place in this school is fabulous. And seeing so many familiar, loving, kind faces that I'm watching and getting hugs, actually getting hugs. It's been a long year, and this has helped me with my decision I didn't want to make, but I had to make it. And Jacob will be a senior, so I'll be back up for everything. And then, of course, even after that, because there's always kids that need somebody applauding for them in the stands. I just pray that everyone that has retired this year has a full life. I'm hoping to get back to a full life very soon. And I can't thank everyone enough for caring, for being kind to those around you, and being so loving to me for so many years. I regret two things this year, many, but two, is I didn't get to work with Mr. Shabady, who I've known for years and years and years, And for Kevin Pask, who's a new teacher at school, that's one of my kids. And, but I really have missed all of you. But I keep up with you on anything you're on, Twitter, Facebook, just so I can get a taste of my love, my life here at Cuyahoga Falls High School. And of course, to the staff, Peggy and Ellen, they helped me through, and Mallory, helped me through so much this year. And without Allie, I don't know what I'd do. I always could count on her saying, Judy Ray, I love you. And that was all I needed. Thank you so much for this honor. And we'll see you at the next thing at Falls High.
Our last retiree who is with us this evening is Harry Riddle. Harry, come on up. Harry served as a custodian at Richardson Elementary School. And I asked Mr. Joe Bagatti, our Director of Business Operations, to say a few words about Harry. Just a few.
There's no such thing as a few words from me, so sit back and relax. I'd like to tell a story. The very first time I met Harry, I'll be in the district 6 years in July, and I made it a point to go around all the buildings in July when the summer cleaning was going on, and I stopped into Richardson and I met Harry. Well, Harry was there all alone. His head custodian was on vacation. And was known to take vacation for most of the month of July. So as I'm talking to Harry, he tells me, he says, Joe, I think he said Mr. Bagatti, which was great, but he said, you know, could you have Aaron send someone over here to help me move these chairs? There's a couple classroom full of chairs I need to move to the stage. And I said, Harry, no need for that, I can help you. He said, no, I insist, let's get Aaron to have someone help us. So I insisted, I said no, so I'm helping Harry move these tables, we're moving them to the stage. So we get about half done, and I was about 54 at the time, and I thought I was in pretty good shape. I'm dying. I'm telling you, I am really dying, and I'm saying to myself, wow. So we get going, we get finished, and we finish, we sit down, and I am sweating. I am really sweating, like I got off a treadmill. I look at Harry, and there's not a bead of sweat on his eye, not a bead of sweat on his forehead. And I said, Harry, if you don't mind, can I ask you how old you are? Now remember, this was 6 years ago. He said, I'm 71. I said, oh my God. Harry, you're an inspiration to our young. You're an inspiration to all the custodians and the cleaners. You're certainly an inspiration to me. I want to thank you for your years of service. I want to thank you for all you have done for our students, our staff, for always being there. Whenever I've called and asked for anything, Harry, you were always there, and I know you did it for everybody and for the entire staff of Cuyahoga Falls City Schools. So thank you, God bless you, and you deserve your retirement.
We have one teacher who was unable to be here tonight as much as she wanted to. Mrs. Jody Tucker is retiring from Richardson Elementary School with 24 years of service. She is the music teacher there, but since she couldn't be with us, she sent us a video. So I'm gonna, if you turn your attention over here, there's Mrs. Tucker. It's good to see her. I haven't seen her in a while.
Hi there, Mrs. Tucker here. I would like to thank the Cuyahoga Falls City Schools for a great run over these past 24 years. Although I taught music in the early 80s for a few years in Barberton and in the Metro Denver area, Cuyahoga Falls City Schools has been my home since September of 1998. I've had the most fortunate opportunity to do what I wanted to do from the age 13 on, teach music at the elementary level to students. It has been a joy and a privilege. In doing that, not only was music learned and enjoyed by the students, but many lifelong bonds of family and friendship have been formed within those years. Those deep bonds are with staff members, former students, parents, and even grandparents of students. Once a black tiger, always a black tiger. I thank you again for the opportunity to teach at Preston and Richardson for 7 years and the remaining 17 years at Richardson. Thank you.
Brings us to the conclusion of our retirement awards. I want to thank once again everybody who came to be recognized, everybody who came and spoke. I know all of our retirees appreciate that. When we're done with Top Tigers and you're all excused for the evening, please take cupcakes home with you because we don't need them all around. Right, Mr. Shabby?
You're right.
All right, thank you again.
On to presentation number 2, our Top Tigers recognition. Mr. Shabby, please.
Thank you and good evening. Thanks for being here. Usually I say the Top Tigers is the highlight of the board meeting, but that's going to be pretty tough to top the awards that we just had. To be able to see Judy Ray again and Mrs. Pellegra, whose husband I went to school with in 1974. It's great to see all of you, and congratulations on your retirements. Please enjoy it. I know I did for 3 years until this opportunity arose. But I'm glad I have. I've just seen a lot of people that I knew from the community, and it's been great. So recognizing these young people as our Top Tigers is always exciting. To think about it in the school that you're in, out of all those kids there, you're being recognized. So that's a pretty awesome award. And at this time, I'd like Dr. Cruz, if you'd come up and help me with this, I'd appreciate it. Before I call your names, I'm going to introduce Mr. Gary Metcalf, who is the Executive Director of the Cuyahoga Falls Alumni Association and Schools Foundation, to tell you a little bit about the organization and to give you a free t-shirt. So, Mr. Metcalf.
Good evening. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to congratulate all the retirees. I know most of them, and I'm very blessed to be part of their lives, to have known all of you, and to have worked with some of you also. Congratulations to the Top Tigers this evening. We'd first like to thank our sponsors tonight, Donato's Pizza, Dietz's Florist, Young Screen Printing. The foundation, some of the things they've done in the past few years, they've helped out with the new entrance to Clifford Stadium, Tiger Trail. The foundation assists with class reunions. They sponsor all class reunion. We honor distinguished alumni. And in the last 8 years, we have awarded over $42,000 worth of teacher grants. And I know some of you sitting in here tonight have had some of them. And in the past 8 years, we've awarded over $1 million in scholarships to our Black Tiger alumni. And last but not least, we get to march in the Memorial Day Parade again. It's been too long since we've marched in it. 2 years we haven't been because of COVID, so we'll be marching this year. If you did not get information from your principal at your school, please see me afterwards, and also see me. You'll get one of these Top Tiger t-shirts this evening. Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to introduce the students from Bolick, Roberts, and the high school. When I call your name, if you'd come forward, please. I'd like to start off with Riley McAllister. Is Riley here? Come on up, Riley. Riley is an 8th grader at Bolick Middle School. Riley was nominated by Mrs. Bertleff and Mr. Faulkner for the month of April. Riley exhibits a positive and respectful attitude in her unified art classes. She has a mature outlook when collaborating with peers and teachers. In our classes, she makes choices that reflect our Black Tiger pride. She responsibly picks group members, she safely follows classroom instructions, and she respectfully treats all members of her class well. Riley has a capacity to speak to any person, including her teachers, which reflects her responsible demeanor. Congratulations, Riley. Also from Bolick Middle School, Jordan Sanchez. Jordan here? Come on up, Jordan. Jordan's a 7th grader at BOE. He constantly demonstrates top Tiger behaviors and characteristics at school and within our Black Tiger family. He was nominated by Mrs. Wickline for the month of April. Jordan is a great student. He comes to class ready to learn and is always attentive. He gives his best every day without complaint. He's a pleasure to have in class, and we're glad he is a BOE Black Tiger. Congratulations, Jordan. Roberts Middle School also has some good kids, I guess, over there. Brady Hackworth. Brady, are you here? Come on up. Brady was nominated by Mr. McGovern for the month of April. Roberts Middle School is lucky to have students like Brady Hackbarth. If you do not know Brady, you are missing the chance to know a polite and hardworking young man who absolutely deserves to be our top Tiger. Brady is the type of student who simply shows up every day with a smile on his face, all right, works harder than almost everyone else around him, and then goes home happy. He has earned all A's and B's this year, and that is because he has tremendous work ethic and willingness to do what is necessary to find success. His teachers rave about his humility, kindness, and his ability to work with anyone he is asked to. In summary, Brady is just a great student and even better person. The staff of Roberts thanks him for being our top Tiger, and we look forward to hearing about all his successes in high school. Congratulations, Brady. Good job. Also from Roberts Middle School, Michael Hickman. Michael here? Come on up, Michael. Michael was also nominated by Mr. McGovern. As an 8th grade staff, we feel so fortunate to have Michael in our lives. Throughout Michael's time at Roberts, he has shown the ability to persevere and do what is necessary to find success. In this particular year, Michael's maturity and dedication to their studies has increased significantly, with Michael earning all A's and B's during quarter 3. His math teacher, Mr. McGovern, stated, "Michael is truly an exceptional student who will certainly go far in any direction he chooses to go." We will miss Michael when he goes to the high school next year, but we're excited for him as he enters the next chapter. Congratulations, Michael. You are a top Tiger. Next, from Cuyahoga Falls High School, Sadie Qualls. Is Sadie here? Come on up, Sadie. Sadie is a senior. You ready to graduate? You ready? All right. You were nominated by the math department. We would like to nominate Sadie Qualls for March 2022 Top Tiger for the Department of Mathematics. We are impressed with her dedication and desire to learn high levels of mathematics. As a junior, she excelled in AP Calculus. Now that Sadie is a senior, she is doing excellent work in both AP Calculus BC and AP Statistics. Her peers look up to her for her leadership. She is very helpful, polite, and kind in both the classroom and any part of the school building. She is interested in majoring in early childhood education. That's good. We need more people like you in education. And we think she would make a fantastic educator. We wish her much success in her future endeavor. Where are you going to college? Hiram. All right. Congratulations and good luck at Hiram. Also from Cuyahoga Falls High School, Zachary Barnes. Is Zach here? Come on up. The math department, Mr. Kern, says it's a privilege to nominate Zach Barnes for Top Tiger. Zach is a wonderful young man and is a great example for our finest students at Cuyahoga Falls High School. In his 4 years on the tennis team, he has grown from novice to one of our top players. Academically, he is among our best students, having taken pre-calculus through our College Credit Plus program as a sophomore. He is currently earning top marks in AP Calculus. There is no doubt that Zach will have continued success in college and beyond. Where are you going to college?
Stark State.
Stark State. Congratulations, Zach, top Tiger. Good job. Again, at this time, the retirees and the students and their parents, you're more than welcome to leave, or you can sit around and wait for Mr. Bagay. He's going to talk about plumbing issues in the college and the schools. So, thank you and have a great evening. Congratulations.
Thank you, Harry, so much.
Thank you.
cupcake. The online presentation for literacy said 50 slides because they used a template, and then like I was like 50 slides. I was like, I'm gonna have to call Amy and be like, no, we're not doing this is an update. You can't have 50 slides. Like, no.
Pick your 5 favorites.
Take cupcakes.
Yeah, take cupcakes.
But it's like 8. It's like,
Oh, wow.
it's just dumb. Like, that's
He's so sweet. I talked to him a little bit. He's just really sweet.
Don't eat a cupcake.
He's not through. His wife.
That's the first time
I know. You're on your own, Cameron.
Oh, shoot. Oh, my God.
How can you send emails if you don't look at your email inbox, Cameron?
Oh, my gosh. It's the worst night Yeah, I went to the back table where all the Roberts. Oh, I had your grandson. I go, uh-oh. Uh-oh. When we had Maddie, I said, oh, yeah.
Let you go in front of me tonight.
I'm gonna invite up group presentation number 3, Resilient Leadership Book Study Group number 5.
All right. Jeez, ours is going to be really short this week. That's all I got to say.
Is Celine on?
Okay.
We had a conversation about that.
We are so excited to be the last group going because, as they say, the last group will go the quickest. So, no, we're happy to we'll go short and sweet for you because you've had 5 other presentations, but we do have some things we want to focus in on here tonight. Members of group number 5 are Joanne Osland, our assistant treasurer, Amanda Wyckoff, the principal of the Price Elementary School, Courtney Lewis, our coordinator of English learners, Allison Bogdan, the principal of the Cuyahoga Falls High School, Julia Hall, who cannot be with us, the principal of Richardson. She is parenting this evening with a son who's in the regional finals for the pole vault. So she's prioritizing that, which we cannot blame at all. And Patty White, our esteemed board member. So we're going to go through our work. We're going to discuss Chapter 8. And really 5 key points from Chapter 8 on page 143 in Chapter 8. There are so many good things in the book, it's hard to pick 1 or 2 things, so we found these 5 bullets that resonated with us. So, Joanne Osland is our first resonating point.
This is hard getting your microphone and not singing, but one of the points was to deepen your conviction that every person has a greater reservoir of strength and resiliency than meets the eye. So don't ever doubt people can go much deeper than you think.
All right, and then, so a big part of this book is about leadership and not reacting. So thinking deeply on why rescuing is not always the best impulse to follow. So this comes from the chapter about the fallacy of empathy, the mistake of being too empathetic in a situation. And a lot of us get into education because we love to help. So our default action is to help others when they're struggling. And that is not always the right thing to do. Because a little healthy struggle is a good thing, because sometimes we grow through those struggles. And taking that time and resisting that impulse of seeing somebody in trouble and going immediately to aid and to what the book would call overfunction. When we overfunction and aid, we allow other people to underfunction and not reach their potential. So it's that slowing of that impulse is really critical.
All right, watch your own reactivity in action and practice the pause or pausing to consider thoughtfully before taking steps to fix someone's problem or lessen their pain. So I have an analogy for this one that I used with our group that kind of got a song and it really grew. But I took this through the literacy lens, shock, but during my literacy training, I learned about what we call let it linger. So when a child makes an error, Our first reaction oftentimes as parents or grandparents or anybody that's reading with a child is to jump in and fix it. However, children grow their self-extending system of problem solving by being able to let that error linger and to continue on, and then to have the ability to go back and fix it. That's kind of our overall goal of reading, is to give kids a toolbox so that they can process and fix their own mistakes. So when I read this section of the book, that's what I applied to the leadership style, is that I'm a rescuer and a fixer. My staff, some of my friends are back there. So I'm learning as a leader to kind of let some of those mistakes and errors linger so they can fix them themselves. So.
Watch for opportunities to practice in small ways the skill of letting others experience the consequences of their choices, especially when those consequences are painful for those you care about. And yeah, this strategy can be tough because you don't want to see people who you care about go through discomfort or pain, but in the end, learning from mistakes will make someone a stronger person and more resilient.
Okay, I don't really need this, but be intentional about reflecting on situations where empathy was not the best response. Write down your insights as a way of embedding them more deeply in your leadership repertoire. So.
Thank you. So we sum this up with a key idea here, and Mrs. Bogdan will kind of close our discussion.
I'm not going to sing it.
No.
Not tonight. But I am going to leave you with my favorite sentence from this section of the book. And it says, in every case, when the leader leads with a well-defined, thoughtful, and less anxious presence, the organization's odds of defending against the invasiveness of toxic forces are increased rather than lowered. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 5. And then we're going to keep our work with resilient leadership going, because at the last meeting in June, John Moyer is going to come and present on what he learned about our district and our system from the work that he's done with us, and then some recommendations he might have for us going forward. So we're keeping good work and positive momentum going forward. I'm looking forward to, he wanted to come as soon as possible, but he's out of town grading AP exams on June 1st, and I said, oh, I can give you an excuse to get out of it, but he's committed. Next up is number 4 on presentations, 5-year forecast. Ms. Stoikoi will take a motion a second first. So it's recommended that the Board of Education approve and accept the 5-year forecast as presented by the Treasurer CFO.
So moved.
Second.
And then Ms. Stoikoi.
Thanks.
What's our theme?
Okay. I'm not going to be as quick, but if I was, I feel like that wouldn't say much about my job and what I do every day. If we could just buzz through this, so I'll try to be as efficient as possible. It's my favorite thing to do. So first, I want to start you with this. So I'm beginning to really detest May. It's worse than December. I gotta go to 17 kid things and during the day and dress them up and all this other stuff, and it's driving me crazy. So, thought you would enjoy this.
It's gonna be May.
They do. All right, so then it's just their practice. But that is how I feel about May, and it gets worse every year as my kids get older, and even I can't escape it because school is work and work is school, right? So, all right. So the purpose of the 5-year forecast: to engage the board and the community in long-range planning and discussions of financial issues facing the district, to serve as a basis for determining our ability to sign contracts, and to provide a method for the Ohio Department of Education and Auditor of State to identify schools with potential financial problems. So this is our May filing of the 5-year forecast. The assumptions and estimates are made based on historical trends, which, you know, with the last couple of years thrown in there, are real great and totally reliable. So the fiscal year 2022 is this year, this current school year, and that uses the base year to determine the future projections in the 4 years after that. It's a conservative document, so it takes a conservative approach, allowing flexibility when our unexpected situations arise, which of course they do all the time. And it's based on the information available to the district at the time of this forecast. So it's likely that this will change. It absolutely will change, but generally trends do not. That's not particularly true at the moment, but typically that's the case. So the district will need to remain diligent in assessing the need for additional expenditures. Obviously, each addition raises expenses with no offsetting revenue, which hastens the decline of cash balance. A worsening cash balance can erode the district's stability over time. And while increased inflation impacting district costs are expected to continue over the next few years, the economy is also expected to continue to grow as the recovery from the pandemic continues. So here is a snapshot of the bottom line. And it shows last year's actual in those first column, and then this year, and then the future years. The pink, orangish coral color represents renewal levies. We cannot assume those. We'll get into that a little bit later, but you can see we end 2026 with about $15 million. Here's a little bit broken down there where you can see the actual amounts of the renewal levy on that proposed renew replacement levies line. So next year, so the next 3 years there, 23, 24, 25, include the emergency levy, and then there's the renewal of the 7.9, I believe, in that final year as well. And then you can see the very bottom shows where we would be at if those levies were not to be renewed. So you can see by the end of this forecast, we would be in the red. And that cash balance would erode pretty quickly. Little snapshot there of the categories that make up revenue. So the two largest revenue sources will probably never change. Real estate taxes and state funding make up about 83% of all of our revenues. 2 renewals are for existing levies, one in calendar year 22, so this coming November, and one in 2025. We are expected to decrease revenue, and we'll get into why, at an average rate of 1.1%. Historically, revenue increased 3.92%. That's not anything to be alarmed about. It really has a lot to do with the way we get state funding now. So real estate, starting with real estate. So the 9.97 mil levy, originally approved in 91, was renewed this past November for a 5-year period. And most recently in May, the 4.75 mil levy which was originally approved in 2002, was renewed by voters in May, yes, for a continuing period of time. So back in fiscal 20, we received a half-year collection on the additional 4 mil operating levy that was approved in November of 19. That was the combination levy that included the bond for the school building and permanent improvement. The bond and permanent improvement are not part of the general fund, so they are not reflected in this forecast. Last fiscal year was the first year we received a full year collection on those 4 mills. And so you'll kind of see the difference when you look at the graph here. I'm gonna just, oh, wait, graph's on the next page. Never mind, I moved it. So real property is assessed every 3 years. So a sexennial reappraisal is performed every 6 years. The most recent was in 2020, which, if you recall, we had a very large increase across the board of 13.76%. The last triennial update was in 2017, and the next one is in 2023. So the 2 renewal levies is the 2017 emergency levy, which expires at the end of this calendar year. If unsuccessful, the district will no longer collect that beginning in calendar year 2023, so January of 2023. 7.9 mil will expire in 2025 as well. So you can see here the renewal levies are also modeled in that orangish color. Cannot assume the renewals of those forecasts, so that top line, when you look at the overall forecast in the snapshot, it appears that the real estate line is decreasing. It's just that those renewals are shown at a different place. They cannot be assumed in real estate and or the other categories that involve that. So you can see there's a substantial loss of revenue if either of the 2 levies were unsuccessful. Public utility represents tax revenues paid by public utilities. Property value in the district for this is relatively small. It generates less than 1% of total revenues for us. Historically, average dollar amount change was around $30,000. It's increased a little through the forecast to about $33,000 on average throughout the remainder of the forecast. Property tax. So this is homestead and rollback is what it's referred to as. It includes a 10% property tax rollback for all residential and business real estate. And then in 1979, an additional 2.5% rollback was enacted for owner-occupied homes. And homestead exemptions are also available for qualifying taxpayers. Represents around 6.25% of total revenues. So hitting on those, it's very important to note, and we talk about this a lot, that if any of our future renewal levies that were originally approved before 2013 were to lapse, so if we were not to renew them and they were to expire, and we would have to put on a new levy. House Bill 59, which was put into legislation in 2013, would have a major impact to the local taxpayer. So currently, all those levies previous to 2013, new levies, are being reimbursed by the state. That 12.5% is being reimbursed by the state. If there's an interruption to that collection, the state no longer is responsible for that reimbursement, and they shift that back to the taxpayer on a new levy. So any new levies that are approved after that fact, that 12.5%, it's up to the taxpayer to pay that and not the state. They also changed the requirement for homestead exemptions. So individual taxpayers who did not currently have the homestead exemption approved as of 2013 and become eligible will only receive that exemption if they meet a certain income qualification. So that income qualification didn't exist before. So people previous to that are grandfathered and they won't lose it going forward regardless of income. But homestead reimbursements have decreased from previous levels, and I've really seen it over the past few years that it just keeps ticking down because obviously people are grandfathering and they are either moving or most of these are age related. So unfortunately, if they're passing away or the house is being transferred to someone else, you have to also have those income requirements, and they're pretty difficult. So the state is also increasing that tax burden back to the local taxpayer. Excuse me. Unrestricted grants and aid, or state aid, and we'll spend a little bit of time on this because the new funding formula is complicated at best. So a little history. This makes up about 25% of our revenues, second largest source. And it also includes proceeds we receive from the casinos are in this category. So in fiscal 20 and 21, the governor's biennium budget didn't really change anything. He pretty much said you're getting what you get in fiscal 19. There was no formula really. If you got 10 million in 19, he said that's exactly what you're getting in 20 and 21. We're not calculating. We don't care how many kids you have. We don't care about any of this. You're getting what you get. Obviously, in the middle of that, the pandemic hit. And in May of 2020, he announced a cut of $300 million to K-12 education. So for us, that was a little bit under $1 million, which is about, at the time, 6% of our state aid. So they continued those same cuts through the first half of 21, but then restored them part of the way through based on the economy. So it was about half of that is what we were reduced in fiscal 21. Now, mind you, these are 18-19 school year amounts that we're getting and then being reduced, and we're in 2021. So another casualty of revenue, of course, was casino proceeds, because casinos were closed for a significant amount of time. So previously we would receive around $240,000 in a normal year. We received only $178,000 in 2021. We have resumed normal collection rates since those have opened back up to about that $240,000, $250,000 mark. Okay. So now the Fair School Funding Plan. So in 2022, this being the first year of the biennium budget, Ohio adopted the Fair School Funding Plan, which has been in the works for a number of years and was made up of committee members of superintendents and treasurers and legislators and people who are actually living this on a day-to-day to come up with an equitable way to fund schools. So there's a lot of changes then to the way it was and how expenses are charged off now. So state foundation basic aid is calculated on a base cost with funding paid to the district where the student is enrolled to be educated. So previously what would happen is they would say, you have X number of students that reside in Cuyahoga Falls, and that's where they should be going to school based on where they live. And we'll fund you for those students, and you get that funding, and that's that. And then that's the top half of the report. And then the bottom half of the report would have, but you have this kid coming from Stowe, and this kid coming from Woodridge, and this kid coming from here open enrolled. So you're going to get this after the fact. But you also have these 20 kids going out somewhere else. So we're going to take away, basically charge you. We also have programs like John Peterson and Autism Scholarship that we're going to charge you for. You're also going to be charged for the kids that go to community schools. You're also going to be charged for any kids that choose to option into Ed Choice. And you're also any STEM schools. So there was all this like, here's the calculation, but all this stuff after the fact that was like this in and out. And so they said, we're not doing that anymore. We're just going to fund you for the kids that you're actually educating no matter where they live or where they're from. So what that's done, and a big part of this is that there's no separate open enrollment revenue payments to school districts starting this year. So previous, that used to be for us about $3.5 million revenue. There was also about a $2 million outgoing expense. Well, now both of those are eliminated. So you can see part of the big reason why it seems like our revenues are decreasing. They're really not. We're also having an offset on the expense side for all of those things. So overall, both revenues and expenses are lower than they have been in previous years because of this. So I kind of just talked about this. All of these other things, community schools, STEM schools, that the state has decided to make direct payments to the district, what STEM district, what place the student is at. So House Bill 110, which is the state budget, includes formula transition aid, which is a guarantee. So there are 3 guarantees, in both temporary and permanent law to ensure that a district will not get less funds in 2022 than they received in 2021. But let me remind you again that that's based on 1819. So now we're about 4 years back. So it is based on a guarantee level of full state funding cuts from May 2020 restored, so they didn't include that in there. But they're also saying net of all your transfers, all these things we did below the line, plus these student wellness and success funds we gave you on the side that weren't part of general fund, that's how we come up with your guarantee. They've also offered, so if you have a significant enrollment growth in years, you can have a supplement. There's a supplement funds paid. They've also done special education, preschool, and special education transportation are kind of outside that guarantee. So an overview of the key factors that influence basic aid and the Fair School Funding Plan are student population and demographics, property valuation, personal income of district residents, and historical funding, so any guarantees, any kind of, there used to be a cap also of prior funding formulas. So it basically used to be your residence and property valuation. Well, now we've kind of spread that out a little bit into a couple different areas. So one of the biggest changes, as I've said, is that they'll start using district educated enrollment, which is comprised of resident students attending and open enrollment in students. In prior funding formulas, ADM was used to calculate state funding, which would be our residents. So this is important to look at, and I will talk about it later in things. So part of this formula has some different factors. So one is enrollment. So when they're looking at your enrollment, obviously COVID had a negative effect for most people on enrollment. We did not accept as many open enrolled students due to spacing concerns, and you can see the dip. We were already trending down a little bit, but you can see the dip in 2021 where we were at. So what the formula does is it says, we're going to look at the highest of these two things, your most recent year enrollment or a combination of the last three, an average of your last three. So for us right now, we're in, last year it was 4,033, I think, for that last year and this year is around where the state says what we have as part of this funding formula. But because the last couple years were higher, we're getting an average of higher. Now you can see what that is going to be like as you go out. That number drops, and so we'll talk about that, but I just want you to keep that in mind. So base cost, another wonderful time where they use fiscal 18, so 17, 18, salaries, those kinds of things, average district costs, and developed a basic cost approach that includes minimum service levels and student-teacher ratios for 4 areas. Direct classroom instruction, instructional student support, building leadership and operations, district leadership and accountability. So I know that's hard to see, but that's kind of like their example. You know, they're saying in there, every first grade class, you should have 1 teacher for every 22 first graders. So if you have 300 first graders, we're going to take that, divide it by 22. That's how many FTE we're going to fund you. So this is the overview of kind of what it looks like for Cuyahoga Falls. Now you can see that bottom enrollment number. Right now we're using a number of 4312 because that's the average of the last 3 years. Next year we're dropping about 150, 160 kids because that non-COVID year is out, and now they're all COVID years we're taking the average of. And you can see that it kind of slowly increases back. But you can also see what it does. It funds us about, the calculated base cost is about $1 million less than it is this year because of that. So capacity per pupil, this is the, that's what they've calculated, but now how much can your local property tax, personal income, how much can your community chip in for this, basically. What percentage are we going to fund you, and what percentage can you handle of that amount? So it used to be referred to, and it still kind of is, as a state share percentage. So the state looks at you and says, how wealthy are you? Depending on how wealthy you are, that percentage that they will fund you goes up or down. The higher the district's ability to raise taxes based on local wealth, the lower the state's going to chip in, the lower the percentage goes. The state share percentage will be based on property valuation, federal adjusted gross income, which is new, and federal median income, which is also new to this formula. So 60%, most recent 3-year average of assessed values. Let me tell you something else. A couple years ago, we increased 13.76%. Right now, it's using the average, which includes a number that's about $100 million lower in that 2019 year. Next year, it's not going to be in there in the next year or two. We're going to be at all the higher numbers, so it's going to assume we're wealthier going forward. So we're losing enrollment, and the state assumes we're wealthier now, based on those averages. 20% is on federal adjusted gross income, and 20% on federal median income. So you see it's still heavy on the property tax, but it's gone to a 60-40 split instead of 100%. So then those weighted values are calculated. The total is multiplied by a local share multiplier index ranging from 0% for low wealth districts and 2.5% for wealthy districts. You can see we're at 2.19%, so they think we're pretty wealthy. I beg to differ.
I would agree.
And you can see our total valuation in 22 of that I have to look at my page here. That 806, then it goes up to about 842, 882. Obviously, that triennial update in 2023 will affect this. We'll have a little bump. The next reappraisal, we'll have another one when we actually go through that. So it all depends on that. You can see the enrollment declining, and you can see that the capacity they say we have is increasing. So that's not good. So you can also see then they break that down to that capacity per pupil times the multiplier, and they say here's the percentage of that per pupil base cost, which for this year was $73.41, and you can see how it goes based on that base cost analysis. We'll give you $27.49 of that. You're responsible for $45.92, and you can see how that pans out as we continue to go on. Our share increases, they decrease. So I still am a huge proponent of this formula, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm not. It's just, unfortunately, due to the situations that we are particularly in, it will have an effect. So in addition to that, there also has unrestricted categorical funding and restricted. So restricted funding would mean that it has to be spent for a purpose. They track it. They make sure you're spending it for those reasons. Economically disadvantaged is one of them. It's now called disadvantaged impact pupil aid, I think. And some of these have the state share percentage applied to these calculations. Some of them don't. While this whole thing was presented as a 6-year phase-in plan to get to 100%, because some of these things aren't fully funded, the only thing guaranteed is the first 2 years, because that's what the biennium budget is for. So there is no guarantee that this will even be the formula we use after next year. And again, I was telling Rusty, and I've told other people, going through this, it feels like the butterfly effect, if you've ever seen that movie, and it's like one little thing changes here, and it just throws everything out, and then you add in a governor race in November, and who will be making that state biennium budget, and who will be in the Senate, who will be leading and making these decisions for the state of Ohio, and that has a big thing to do with it too. So right now, it's 2 years what we got. We got 1 more year of guaranteed this and what I'm talking about. So it doesn't include caps on funding, but it's a general phase-in, usually like 1/6, and moving forward for 6 years, even though the only guarantee is the third, the 33.3%. Disadvantaged pupil impact aid and career tech funding are continued. Those were previously also restricted funds. They've also added restricted funds for gifted English learners, student wellness and success, which is now incorporated into the general fund. Previous, it was outside of the general fund. And catastrophic aid, which was previously and still will be posted as a restricted revenue and is expected to double in 22 because of the changes. It's not necessarily a huge increase of money. They're also charging us to kind of fund this pot of catastrophic costs, and so now the pot will be bigger, and so we'll get more back. So any students that are ours that are high expenditure special ed students where we spend over a certain threshold, we can submit to the state for some catastrophic cost reimbursement is what they call it. Basically, everyone in the state of Ohio submits all their kids, and they've got a pot of money, let's say, of $1 million. So after they get everybody's in and they figure out, okay, so we've got people submitted $2 million. So we can fund everybody at 50%. We can reimburse everybody 50%. Typically, it's been like 26%, 25% is what we get back out of that. So it's supposed to double because now they're taking some money from us to kind of like increase that pot. So we'll see, this will be the first year, we'll see how that kind of works out, if it works out in our favor or not, or how much it actually does increase. They have not reimbursed us yet. What I submitted was over $1 million. So if that were to double, that would be great, but we'll see. And then some things are at a different phase-in level, so the disadvantaged pupil impact is at 0 and 14%, and transportation is not subject to a phase-in, so fun. So unrestricted, these things, there's no requirement, but they just kind of do it based on different factors that are categorical. So targeted assistance capacity aid provides additional funding based on wealth measure, using current year average daily membership. It will also provide supplemented targeted assistance to lower wealth districts whose enrolled ADM is less than 88% of their fiscal 19. There's special education, additional aid, which is based on the 6 weighted fund categories. And you can see an amount of 10% will be reduced from the district's calculation to be used towards the state appropriation for catastrophic cost reimbursement. That's new. Transportation, this includes all resident students who ride, including preschool students. It's also, so increases the state minimum share from that 29%, or to 29% and 33% in this House bill. So restricted, these are the ones we have to spend on certain things. The DPIA, it's based on economically disadvantaged students, and it's $422. So the phase-in, their increases are limited to 0% and 14%, but they've held us harmless. So if we actually have less, which a lot of people do, because another wonderful thing about the pandemic was that, well, I should say, non-sarcastically, one of the wonderful things was we had free lunch and breakfast, and we were able to provide that for our students. On the flip side, we do not have as many families that fill out free and reduced lunch forms, so that economically disadvantaged percentage for us has gone down. It has gone down for, that's not just us, it's everyone. Because, I mean, frankly, if you're getting free, why would you fill it out if you don't have to? You wouldn't. I mean, there would be no reason for you to. So I certainly wouldn't unless somebody told me or unless I happened to see something. And so we've tried and done our best with that, but it's down overall. But this is a kind of hold harmless, so we're getting exactly what we got last year, even though we're reduced. Any increases are subject to that phase-in. English learners, gifted funds, and career technical funds, and student wellness and success. So that's what we look like for all those different categorical funds, you can see the ones at the top are not phased in, they're 100%. And so that's what we receive. You can see the catastrophic cost set aside, that's what's being taken from us. And then at the bottom, these are the ones that are phased in. Any increases are phased in, I should say. You can see we kind of received some of that targeted assistance capacity funding next year, just a small amount, and then in the future years that we discussed, our disadvantaged pupil impact aid, like I said, is the same as it was last year, even though the calculation is significantly lower. So overall, this is kind of a snapshot comparing all of the formulas from the previous to the current. So it's a refresher at the top of what they say our share is and their share is, and what the base cost says it costs to educate a student in our district. Based on that, the state share of the base cost is 11 million. The categoricals that we said are a little over 2 million. So they've calculated our funding from them to be 13 million. Well, in 2020, based on 2019 again, we received 15 million from them, and they kind of do all those, in and outs that they had. So really what we received in 20 was 14,731,000. We're really only getting funded right now, calculation-wise, at 13.2. You can see at the bottom, what our calculated DPIA is about half of what we're actually getting. Now it resumes next year because we've assumed, because there is no more free and reduced lunch for everyone, you have to fill out the application again and be approved in order to do that, that will increase our numbers and our percentage in that area. But again, that's not a guarantee either. And so this side, so our base calculation for fiscal 20 was about 15 and a half, million. So when it adds all those things together, we are still on the guarantee, which means they won't give us any less than they gave us in that fiscal 20 or the year before. And in order to get to that number, they've had to give us about a little under 300,000. You can see that number continue to jump because of our enrollment and property valuation changes. Finally, by the time we get to the very last year, we are supposed to be on the actual formula, where we will, and it shows a larger increase based on increase of enrollments little by little, some phase-ins coming to fruition, that we will be off the formula. But again, nothing is guaranteed past those first two columns. And you see the difference in the guarantee from this year to next year. It goes from a little under 300 to almost 800,000. So this is what it looks like for us, this entire category, both restricted and unrestricted. Our total funding, casino revenue this year was about 257,000, preschool 339, special education, transportation a little over 100, and then there is that restricted categorical aid of about 1.5 million. That catastrophic cost restricted is double. It's projected to be double what we received last year. So we received about 165 or something last year, and we're looking at 332. So total state funding for us is about 16.7 million, a little under 17. So that was fun. All other operating revenues, and here's where you will see this, where open enrollment comes in, and you see that huge decrease. So it includes revenue from interest on investments, rental income, pay to participate, excess costs and tuition for non-resident students. So we still do receive some stuff. Children that are court-placed, and this isn't their resident district. We receive tuition for special education students who are open enrolled per se or not residents here. They're still the responsibility of their home district to pay for those excess costs over and above the tuition amount we get from the state. So we bill back this year, in that I think we received around 900,000 in excess costs from other districts. We also have money that goes out as well. So a lot of these were impacted by COVID, interest, rental income. We obviously couldn't do rentals. And obviously open enrollment is no longer part of this category. So we were at 3.2 million last year in revenue for this, and that is no longer reflected here. So we had some decreases. Rest of the forecast shows gradual increases in each of these items to return to typical levels of rental interest. We've started to see some uptick in interest already, so we're hoping to get back to pre-pandemic levels. Fiscal 21 in here last year shows a one-time increase of almost $1 million due to a dividend from the workers' compensation. So they were issuing this payment because they have absolutely too much money in an effort to ease financial pressures. I mean, they have billions of dollars and they're told they have to give it back. So I question why they take it from me in the first place if they have so much, but whatever. It's not assumed in future years. Obviously, we didn't receive it any year other than that. So overall, this category used to be about 10% of our revenues. Now it's a little under 4%. So here are some other key components of this category, because this is kind of the catch-all that's not real estate or state funded. You can see the TIF we have with Portage Crossing. We receive a payment from the city. You can see that open enrollment revenue, what it was, interest, rentals, and then our tuition for our regular school or our special education kids. So this includes any transfers in, advances, refund of prior year. So we received some refunds from, looking again, workers' compensation. And school employees retirement system, which is really just, they kind of true us up at the end of the year. We put in an estimate and we pay them monthly based on the estimate. At the end of the year, they look at what our actual wages for those employees were and they true it up and either give us a refund or we may owe them, depending on what it is. So it was a little bit bigger in 21 this year. Those two combined for about 52,000, and they're not assumed in future years. Excess cost funding, which is a little separate. So this is excess cost that is run through the 6th District Compact. So we employed the special education coordinator for the 6th District Compact. And so she handles all the students that are part of that. So at the end of each year, we bill back those other 5 districts for their portion of her services based on how many kids each of those schools had in the program. So we always get that revenue a year after the fact, so it is considered a refund of a prior year expenditure. And just as a reminder, when you see like the big ups and downs in some of these things, food service and athletics are not accounted for in the general fund, obviously impacted by COVID, but wasn't. And so during the year last year, we had to advance the food service fund $200,000, and then you'll see an advance back in April in this category of $200,000 once they became more fiscally stable in the food service fund. So this is, who doesn't watch Ozark? They got some money, I guess. This is more of a, it's not all Ozark. Maybe it's more of a Julia Garner thing, so she's pretty popular these days. I won't give it away, but ooh. Expenditures. 2 largest expenditure categories, salaries and benefits. Also will probably never change. About 70% of total expenditures. Historically, we increased at 2.25%. And the operating expenditures increased by 1.66% annually. This, again, used to be much higher, but because of the state funding things, it's changed. Obviously, this exceeds the 1.1% decrease in revenues. That's also something that's never going to change. Being conservative as it is, we're usually not going to project that we're going to bring in more than we're going to spend. So personnel services are a little over half of our operating expenditures. All three unions agreed to base wage increases of 2% in 17-18 school year and 1.5% in 18-19. Then in fiscal 20, they agreed to extend their contracts for a year with no base increase on salaries. And then during COVID, we got to negotiate. It was also really fun on Zoom. What is it on Zoom? So we ratified all three unions for 3 years. So they included base wages of increases of 1.5% in fiscal 21, 2.5% in 22 and 23. In addition, employees who had their step frozen during fiscal 12 would have that step restored to them in fiscal 21. 24 through 26, the last 3 years of the forecast, assumes inclusion of all steps for all employees, and a 2% wage increase on the base salary. These are not guaranteed. That has yet to be negotiated. They're included to show the impact of the historical increases given in the district. So the passage of the emergency allowed for almost $400,000 annually for additional staff, and to bring back some staff that had been RIF'd or would be RIF'd. And then that RIF, reduction in force, implemented in 20, provided a cost savings of almost a little over $1 million. Benefits, 22%. So this includes retirement, board's share of Medicare, board's share of health insurance, workers' compensation. During negotiations as well, most recently, all three unions agreed to increase co-pays and co-insurance, which further reduce costs in future years. And that RIF also resulted in a cost savings to the benefit category by $245,000. So this is the history of the insurance premiums. So you can see we went 5.2 to 8.5. We were fortunate to have a 0. 4.9 last year we increased 1%. Going into next year we will increase 4.6%. In November that was projected at 8%, which is what the future years are also projected at. That is also a little bit of a wild west right now as well. Our insurance consortium, the people that run it, said some districts saw 18 to 20% increases this year depending on things. They're seeing a lot of raised costs, hospitals trying to recoup money that they lost during the pandemic. They're seeing different charges for things. So we've done really well, all things considered, and hopefully it stays that way. Purchase services, these are all our professional and technical services, electricity, garbage collection, nursing services. So prior to this year, most of this category was driven by state and federal mandated spending. So this includes our open enrollment out, our community school, our John Peterson, our autism scholarships, our STEM school, and then our increasing numbers of students with special needs. And we've gone over this, that they're no longer going to be, we're no longer going to be charged for those costs. They're going to be direct paid by the state. So that reduces expenses in this category. We are still responsible for things such as College Credit Plus courses. We pay those. Excess costs from other districts for special education students that are residents of Falls but maybe attend elsewhere, and tuition costs. And so those continue to draw funds away from the district. And any expansion or creation of programs that are not directly paid for by the state of Ohio can expose us to new expenditures that are not currently in this forecast. So I'm sure many of you over the course of, I feel like as long as I've been doing this, have heard about things like backpack bills and different things. That could definitely impact this, again, depending on who's in charge and who's making these decisions. So there's a one-time increase this year for preschool services. So we use Summit County ESC to run our preschool program. And typically in the past, what had happened was after the year was complete, they would take the costs and then they would bill them for us. Once everything was done, they would bill us one time in August. We would pay the whole thing in August. This year they went from one installment per year to 2. So for this year only, you see one payment, and then we made a half payment in January. So this year we technically made 1.5. We'll resume back to the 1 as we pay in those half installments each year. So this is about 13% of expenditures. ESSER funds and the prior student wellness and success funds are not part of this forecast. They're posted to different funds. It is not the general fund. So supplies. This will be all your classroom supplies, cleaning supplies, textbooks, library books. So this season saw a significant increase when we passed the emergency levy in November of 17, because one of the major factors in that was textbook adoptions for curriculum that were beyond past due. We also received ESSER funding, which has really helped us in this category because it's offset the increases that we would have charged here for cleaning and sanitation, online learning platforms, additional classroom supplies, textbook adoptions that we felt a need to kind of move along quicker, and other things that were made necessary because of the pandemic. Those expenditures, not all of them, but those like the textbook adoptions and stuff are kind of returned back to the general fund starting in fiscal 25, which is why it jumps there, because we will no longer have those ESSER funds at that point in time. It's a little over 2%, still not a large amount of our expenditures. Capital outlay, so these are all of our equipment, fixed assets, basically anything that has a life expectancy of 5 years or more. Any kind of building, remodeling, roofs, boilers, those types of things. So also saw a significant increase because of the emergency levy. And again, fortunate enough that things like plexiglass dividers, cleaning equipment, technology, things that we had to move on because of ESSER or see additional increases in expenditures, we were able to take them out of ESSER and not here, not the general fund. It's a little over 5%. So kind of a look at the emergency levy. This category is the most significantly impacted by that. So we used emergency levy funds to purchase 1,000 Chromebooks in 20, and we were on a pattern throughout that plan of the emergency levy to get to 1-to-1 for our students, I think by 23, because that's the last year of it. Obviously, COVID changed that, and we were able to purchase another 2,000 in the spring of that year in order to give our students 1-to-1 access and 2-to-1 in grades K-2. So that's kind of what it looks like there. You can see last year some of the purchases we made, buses, roofs at Schnee, Price Richardson, parking lots, boilers, renovating Schnee in order to house the preschool, the media production classroom, that new class is offered through the Career Tech program. We had to do that. This year, we're looking at the Roberts roof. We did the Silver Lake Playground. We updated some of the food service equipment and tables in different places and milk coolers as opposed to renting, which is what we were doing before. 2 additional buses. And then next year, the plan has technology, the buses, parking lots, custodial equipment. And that's a half-a-year collection there. Other objects, this is our payments. The biggest one is to the Summit County auditors. So they charge fees for the collecting and distribution of tax revenue from the taxpayer, then to us. We pay for our annual audit, bank charges, dues, fees, those things. There's an increase in fiscal 20 and 21 because of the passage of the additional 4 mil operating levy. Because it was new, there's obviously fees involved with that. And it also costs money to put elections on the ballot. These fees are collected by Summit County to cover their costs. So there's about $40,000 projected each year because there's never a year without a levy. It seems like throughout the remainder of this forecast. Still, overall, this is only a little over 1% of our total expenditures. Total other financing uses. So taxpayers can file for reductions in property values, and if approved, that refund, they refund the taxes that were paid previously. In the year that they're refunded, the county basically reduces it from our total distribution, and gives it back to the taxpayer. So we're going to talk about this in a minute, but we did, and we still will, but we did monitor these closely to protect our tax base. 2022 saw a significant increase in these refunds, and that is because there were a lot more people that filed based on their valuation increases from that 2020 reappraisal year. So we saw a significant increase in those refunds, which is a cost to us. What's happening? Oh, okay. So new legislation was enacted this year. Just make sure you're awake, Ryan. Restricting the district's ability to challenge these appeals are going to further increase our expenses in this category. So here are some of the changes. So typically what we would do is we would receive a list of all of the people that filed complaints, and we would get to choose whether we wanted to appeal any of those, go through with them. On the flip side, we would also get, our attorneys will look at, wow, this valuation really went down, and usually it's commercial properties. I think we should file a complaint ourselves and make sure that that's correct, because you could stand to lose, X amount of money. So we're no longer allowed to file residential and agricultural complaints. So that wipes that out. And typically, we did typically not file on residential, unless I think maybe once or twice since I've been here. It's typically not worth it because the tax amount is not as much as a commercial property valuation change. So it permits the board to file commercial complaints only when the property was sold in the year before the tax year for which the complaint was filed, and the sale price was at least 10% and $500,000 more than the auditor's value. $500,000 value is for tax year 22. The amount will be indexed to inflation each year going forward. So this also requires the board to provide a notice and pass a resolution for each parcel that you want to file a complaint on, with the notice going to that person, business owner, whomever. You have to give notice to property owners at least 7 days in advance when you plan to vote on a resolution authorizing a valuation challenge. It eliminates the notice to the board for counter complaints, which means we'll no longer receive a notice from the county when a complaint is filed, which means that we will have 30 days to file counter complaints of the day the owner files the original complaint, but we won't know when that is, so we'll just have to guess, I guess. However, they still have to receive notice of BOE complaints, and they get 30 days from the receipt of that notice to file their counter complaint. So we no longer get notified. We have to figure it out and do it within 30 days. If we want to do it against someone else, we have to do it in public, give them notice that we're going to do it in public first, then send this to them. Then they will get a copy of everything, and then they still get 30 days to decide whether they want to counter complaint against that. Bar settlement agreements entered into after the effective date of this legislation. So there are many times where we say, listen, we'll get an appraiser, and we'll say, we'll send them out there and we pay the costs, and it's this amount, he says it's worth this amount. Your guy says it's worth this amount. We can meet in the middle and go forward from there, and then you give us, this lump sum for these years past, and we'll call this settled and we'll move forward. Well, no longer can we do that. The Board of Revisions has to dismiss the case if it's not decided within a year of filing, regardless of what's going on. And we can no longer file an appeal of that Board of Revision decision. So now if the Board of Revisions, decides negatively against us, we can appeal to the Board of Tax Appeals. Can't do that anymore. Good times.
And their response in Columbus was, well, we fixed the funding formula, so it shouldn't matter. It's literally what they said.
for this year and next year. All right, so total other things in this category are transfers and advances out, kind of the opposite of the revenue side. So same thing, food service and athletics. This is where you would see the expense from the general fund going to the food service in, I think it was November, December of 20, and then it came back in April of 21. And that's how I feel after all of that. And Delvey. And her accent, I just love it in there. I can hear it in my head as she's saying that right now. All right. So, line 6.01 gives a good sense of the school district's fiscal health. Positive number means that we spent within our revenue. And a negative number means our expenditures exceeded the revenue generated for that fiscal year. Should never be negative. So how do we look? So in November, this is what it looked like. With and without levies renewed. This is what our revenues expenditures for each year. So this is not the cash balance. This is just what are we spending and what are we bringing in each of those years. So you can see when we got out to 24, 25, 26, we were negative. That's kind of typical that far out because of all the conservative things that are kind of multiplying and building up in there. So this one now looks like this. It's a little bit better. I should say that it really should be a lot better because I was projecting 8% for health insurance, and now this May is 4.6. So while the numbers overall are better, you can see that inflation has also really hit us this year and the cost for things going up. And you can kind of see that in the next slide. I'll talk about it. So the average district in Summit County at the end of last year has cash carryover of about 34.5%. We are the 8th lowest. We're about in the middle in the county with 28.3%. But really, Copley is just like totally skewing that because they have over 100%, and that's just garbage. But whatever. So the ODE recommends that district have 60 days cash carryover. Industry standard is 25%. We obviously have improved cash position, but we continue to focus on building that carryover just in case. So you can see there, those are the differences from May to November. And we are less than what I said in November. And that's with the reduction from 8% to 4.6. So you can see that we've definitely seen the effects, like everyone else, of inflation and gas prices and everything. But overall, as we continue to go out, it gets a little bit better than it was in November. So we still have a positive cash balance, and then you can see where we look based on those indicators that I mentioned before, the 25%, the 60 days cash carryover. We're looking to end this year with about almost 35% cash carryover, and then it increases, and then the last couple of years kind of goes down, but again, that's fairly typical. So is now a good time? You know, I can't go by. He's not going to be here many more meetings, okay? So there is our esteemed interim superintendent. I think I quoted him really well the other day at Finance Committee. Here for a good time, not a long time. And it has been a good time. So we've only got a couple more meetings here together. I had to get it in. He knows. So I am finally done. I apologize. That was a lot of information, and it took a long time, but it's all very important. So if anyone has any questions.
Questions or comments? I'll just say, I know for Ms. White and I, we've sat here and received less positive 5-year forecasts, so it's always nice to sit here, right, Ms. White? And
there could be many worse forecasts. Yes.
Money, so, yeah. Ms. Coco, you had some?
I was just gonna say I don't have any questions at this moment, but
Yeah.
that does not guarantee I will not have
That's
some
fine.
later.
I have questions too.
2 years. 2
Okay.
years.
We'll call the roll. I'll do it while you're sitting
Okay,
there.
thank
Mr.
you.
Harris?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you, thank you.
Our fifth presentation is an elementary literacy update, and I'll invite up Dr. Cruz to intro it.
So this is exciting to be back here in May. We presented another update in an update in January as well about the progress of how our rollout was going with Fontes and Pinnell Classroom at Richardson and Price. So we're just here to give an update not only on how things were going, but we brought some fun. So you can see some of the resources that our teachers are getting. So we'll give you a little update, and then also embedded in that update are some future plans that we have and things that we've been doing to make sure that our teachers at our other 4 buildings are prepared for this as well. So I would like to introduce Julie and Rachel, who will, Ms. Halleck and Dr. Seifert, officially, who will give you this update, and they will also share some fun.
Hello. Thanks for having us back. Let's see. So today we're going to just briefly kind of go over what happened this year, plans for next year, talk a little bit about House Bill 436 and its implications. We brought some resources with us to share with you what the teachers have in their classrooms, and then if you have any questions for us. So this year, what happened this year? So the pilot schools, or the schools where Fontes and Pinnell Classroom were implemented, are Price and Richardson Elementaries. They received the new reading resources from Fontes and Pinnell. One of the, when you talk to the teachers and the students there, something that really came out with conversations that we had was how much students love reading. That having books in their hands hours a day, real, actual, quality literature has been huge. And so that has really stood out to us. Teachers are pleased with the growth that students have shown, especially in the areas of fluency and comprehension. We met with teachers from both of these schools at the mid-year point and talked to them about things that they were seeing, specifically looking at the pillars of literacy. And one of the things that came out of that was that last point, more explicit systematic phonics instruction for kindergarten, first and second grade was needed. This was a point that was brought up during the literacy study. The literacy committee was aware of this, that this was a little bit of a weakness for Fontes and Pinnell Classroom, and we have a solution for that going forward. Myself as the literacy specialist, I have just so enjoyed my time this year. And it started off with helping teachers to implement Fontes and Pinnell Classroom. So lots of modeling. I led, instead of speed dating, it was speed learning. We did it at the beginnings of the day, where teachers could come in for 20 to 25 minutes voluntarily, but I would have different topics that we could learn about things together. Lots of questions just on the spot, whether I'm at Price or Richardson. And then mid-year, once that implementation was in place, I was able to focus on student-centered coaching, which is where teachers pick a goal for their students, a standards-based goal. So if the teacher was a first grade teacher, for example, one that I worked with, she had a phonics goal for her students. So we looked at that goal. I taught, the teacher and I would work together, and we would break that into learning targets, specific targets for her students, and then we would plan together and teach together for 6 weeks. And during that time, the teacher was able to work on and learn from things that we were doing together through our planning and through our teaching. We would pre-assess and post-assess the students. And so far, we've had really good success. 98% of the students from the teachers at those two buildings that I've worked with have demonstrated growth, and over 70% of the students met or exceeded the standards-based goal. So we were very excited about that. So thank you.
That's
It's all
amazing.
it's the teachers, and it's, you know, I've said this over and over again, but I feel the what got me into this position was this idea that by teaching teachers, you know, when I taught 20 kids, it was 20 kids, but the opportunity to teach teachers and work with them, and then that affects so many more children. So that's what I'm really passionate about. DeWitt, Lincoln, Preston, and Silver Lake are the other 4 buildings. So this year, they weren't in the mix as much as Price and Richardson, but this spring, Dr. Seifert and I went to each of those buildings and did an FPC overview presentation for their teachers. And they also received a system guide, which is a good overview of the program without being too overwhelming. They also, the FPC resources that they'll need at the beginning of next school year have been ordered and were delivered to their buildings at the end of April, so they've gotten their hands on their resources. On PD Day, they were able to unpack those resources in the afternoon, and in the morning, we had professional development from Heinemann trainers. So from the publisher, they were able to come in and give PD to the teachers at these 4 buildings. Assessments that were given this year, MAP, I'm sure you're familiar with, that was continued at Price and Richardson and the other elementaries. Acadiance reading was given to the students at the 6 elementaries at the beginning of the year, and then we're re-giving that again at the end of the year to 3 of the buildings to have some comparison data. BASS, which is Fontes and Pinnell's assessment system for determining students' reading levels. That was given at Price and Richardson at the beginning of the year, and will be given again, it is being given again at the end of the year, and that will show the students' growth over time. We have a system as well, so that end of the year running record will go into a folder, and then that'll be passed on to next year's teacher. So next year's teacher will have a good idea as to where to start their instruction.
We're going to continue on with some plans for next school year. So next year, the Fontes and Pinnell classroom, that'll be implemented in all 6 elementary buildings. We're also going to add in Foundations, which is an explicit and systematic hands-on phonics program, and that'll be used in grades K through 2. And our grades 3, 4, and 5, they'll continue on with the Fontes and Pinnell classroom, PWS, which is phonics and word study. Hopefully, we will have 3 literacy specialists, and they'll be divided up 2 per building, and they'll work closely with the teachers and the students, so all 6 elementary buildings will have embedded coaching support. Acadiance reading and BASS will be used to assess all of the students, so we'll have those benchmarks at different times throughout the school year so that we can progress monitor, and the teachers can use that to guide their instruction. Teachers will continue to participate in professional development, and as we said before, our literacy specialists, they're just keys to this. That coaching that is embedded and with those coaches there on a daily basis, the teachers really get a tremendous amount of support, and it's something unlike anything that we've done in this district. It's pretty wonderful. House Bill 436 implications, this is the dyslexia law. So first, before I get into any of this, there's still changes that are afoot. So there's still controversy with the actual law that's been put into place, and then with the guidebook that has been newly adopted. So about a week and a half ago, the guidebook was adopted, but if you follow, Mr. Gomez is shaking his head, if you follow what's taking place with dyslexia and with the conversations that are on the floor for the Senate and the House, there's a lot of controversy still taking place with what's out there. So even though we're required to follow what's in the law come fall, there's still some changes that I think that we can probably expect. So this House bill is requiring school districts to administer annual dyslexia screenings beginning in the 2022 and 23 school year. That in particular is one of the hot buttons that they're still talking about. This is supposed to be phased in over the next 3 years. Dyslexia-related professional development requirements will be in place for public school teachers. So even though that's best practice and all about great teaching, when they're putting those demands on that make it required, that's a whole different level of responsibility for districts. So that's something that we want to watch for. Require school districts beginning in the 22-23 school year to establish a multisensory structured literacy certification process for teachers. So that right there is just a means to an end to make sure that we have the right certification for teachers within the district. But it's also something that we were already planning on. So when we started with this initiative at these two buildings, we knew that we were going to watch and see, well, what are the gaps and where are the areas we need to focus. So the timing is kind of serendipitous because we were already watching for those things, and the Dyslexia House bill is kind of paralleling what we were already putting into place. So we believe we're in really good shape. We have Acadiance reading. We have that planned for next school year, and that fits in with the dyslexia screeners. Foundations is a multisensory literacy program for phonics instruction. Embedded professional development. We've got our Julie here at the lead for that, hopefully adding our 2 literacy specialists to partner with her. We're also adding the foundations piece, but then we're also adding the Wilson reading system. So those are 2 things we're hoping to share a little bit more with you about. Those are in line with the dyslexia requirements, but they're also aligned with what we know is best for our kids here in the district. And then Heggerty is something that we started a few years back. We did not have that continue in our 2 initiative schools this year, but it was continuing in the other 4 schools. We're going to add that back in, and that'll be for all 6 schools.
We just brought a few things to show you, if that's okay. And I'd like to introduce Katie Thomas. She's a 2nd grade teacher at Christ. Come on up, Katie. So she's going to show you, I'll try to help her, just a little bit of some of the things that she uses throughout the day. And if you want to see anything closer, just let us know.
Thank you.
So first we have the IRAs, which are kind of like I think like the center of like the lessons, because all of our phonics, word study, small group kind of centers around it. And they are all like divided up into different like, what would you call it?
Like thematic units.
Yeah, like units. So like the very first one, it's all about friendship. So when they're coming back to school over the summer, like getting them reacquainted with their friends, all of these books are like very relatable to that. They all have these cards in them that give like really good ideas for vocabulary instruction, like what to point out to them about the book, the print features, comprehension and language, and then it also gives ideas of like connecting it with poetry. So this is like an example of like one of the poems that they really like, and then I pulled this poem to be part of like whatever thematic unit it came with. So it kind of like all like ties together, I guess you could say. And then another big part of our day would be like our shared reading. These are like big books. And what's really nice about these is there's really good representation for all of our students. I have several students in my class from India. So this book was a big hit with them. What's really nice about these is there are 6 smaller versions of it that they can then read in a small group, like a centers-based idea. So, and a lot of them, I don't think this one does. This one doesn't, but a lot of them have readers' theaters in them that they can then work and read through them together. So that's pretty And then the PWS lessons, I have them organized in here based on like the month. So it works through like letter sound relationships, So they receive these lessons whole group, and then whenever the students show like needs in specific areas, I pull these lessons again and do them in like a small guided reading group. That's just based on needs. So who maybe needs a refresher on it or who's ready to move on. So that's how you differentiate that. And then we have the independent reading, which was pretty cool for them this year. I'm not even sure how many books they came with in this set. It was quite a bit. But these are just in the library, and they're not leveled or anything. It's just clearly based on student interest. So they get to come up and they get to pick books that they are interested in, and I don't like intervene with them. That's one of the lessons for the. So we have like a mini lessons book that teaches them like very clearly how to pick a book that's right for you, and what to do if a book isn't right for you. You can put it back. It's always okay to stop a book, pick a new one, and just teaches them those skills that they can then apply to go into the library, and not needing my help in that sense. So there's a bunch of chapter books, nonfiction, realistic fiction, like
graphic novels.
Graphic novels.
They're current. It's what the kids want to read.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Let's see. And then we have, if you want to go to the next one, Dr. Seibert. So we should do this last time, the guided reading book rooms. So guided reading is like a lot of what Katie talked about is happening in the whole group setting. Guided reading is small group based on students' levels. So the BAS is what we use to determine students' reading levels. And so that's what that is doing. About what you do for guided reading.
Yeah, for guided reading groups, so these are leveled. So, for example, like level G is a second grade level. So based on their BAS data, I would take them, group the students based on their needs, and then I would come in here to the book room that we have, and I would go through and pick out these cards that they have, and look through the book, look through the card, and I tried my best, it didn't always work out, but I tried my best to always align the guided reading books to relate back to our PWS lessons, just because then they were getting it in like 2 different doses. So for example, like if we were studying like ER and things of words, then I could maybe do this poem because it has ER words in it, and then I'd go to the book room and look for a book that has, you know, an abundance of ER words, because then we can go through and review it. Usually I would keep a book for about a week, and we would spend anywhere from 2 to 4 days on that book, working through word study, which we have stuff to show you for that too. Working through word study and comprehension, but there's lots of resources that come with that word study, and that's why we took like a couple of days to like practice those skills with those books.
So one of the other things that we have as a district are, we call them lib kits. And this isn't through Francis and Pinnell, but the things that teachers need in order to be successful teachers, especially during this guided reading time. So like when Katie has a small group and she's doing that word study, she might have like the magnetic letters, and then students would have a place where they could do their magnetic letter work at that time. So that would happen during that small group. So each teacher has 2 sets of magnetic letters, like a whole alphabet set, so enough so kids can make the words there in their small group during that guided reading time. And that's something that they really like, because it's hands-on and it's multi-sensory, and they get that opportunity to work during guided reading.
And they also have these readers' notebooks as well that are really well organized. So they can keep like a tally in the front of the different types of books they've read, and it's based off of genre.
It's reading or writing workshop.
It
is.
And then they can keep a track of like the books that they've read too. It's just like kind of like a record that they can look back on when they're done with the year. And this kind of goes back to the mini lessons. It's tips for choosing books. This like we teach them at the very beginning of the year. But then it's also a nice reminder because they can keep these at their desks. So when they're picking a book to read, like it tells them, you know, a great idea to pick a book and ask your peers for recommendations, and that just works out as like a skill that, you know, will help them as they get older too, because adults do that too. So, and then they can record the mini lessons. I know some teachers at our school, they would make copies of the anchor charts that they've made, and then the students would cut them out and then put them in here, overview for them of like all the mini lessons they'll have. Like they have short write notes and lists, and it gives them the definition of it as well. So like if you were to do like, you know, an IRA, a read aloud, and on the card, I'll just delete this because I'm like circling back to like a bunch of things. Like on the card, it says on the back like writing about reading, and it gives them like a prompt or an idea to write about, and then you can tell them, okay, in your reader's notebook, I want you to make a list of all the characters and their qualities, you know, and then that's what they would do. But it gives them the directions on here because each idea, if you want them to write a summary chart, a book review, a poem, it gives them an example of it. So it's like a good way to like give them an idea of what to write about.
The other thing that kind of goes hand in hand with guided reading are book clubs. And book clubs, guided reading is based on their level. Book clubs are based on student interest, like independent reading. So this is just an example of like one second grade book club. So you would get all these books. There's four different titles, 6 of each title. They give you a card, and it's essentially kids pick what they want to read, and then they come together just like an adult book club. And they obviously there's teaching them how to do it, but it's talking about the books that they've read and their opinions of those books. The last, I don't know, Dr. Secret, the next one, some of the other things that have been purchased for teachers are easels. Katie was talking about anchor charts. Those are charts like the teacher on the right thinking, charts that kids help to create that are teaching something in particular, and then you keep it up for a little while in your classroom so they can refer back to that. Chart paper was purchased for teachers in addition to the easels, along with pocket charts. So those go along with sentence strips. I feel like Liam. Sentence strips for all the teachers, and then each teacher also received new. I have it in here somewhere. New dry erase boards. Each child has a new dry erase board for this year because they took theirs home last year for learning at home. So, sorry, one more thing. LLI, which is the program Fontes and Pinnell Classroom has for that some of our intervention specialists are using in addition to Title and the EL. It is a leveled system based on where students are reading, usually for kids that are reading below grade level. And so the lessons are found inside the teacher book, and then for each lesson there's an envelope that contains the books that the kids will be reading, and then any resources that the teacher would need for teaching that lesson. And with that, a lot like the ones Katie was showing you, they have a writing book where they can do all their writing, and you can kind of see like how they're making words and their word families. So it just gives them an opportunity and a place where they can go back, write their sentence. The teacher can do things with it with them as well. So I think that's all of our show and tell. Do you have any questions or anything that we can answer for you?
Questions or comments, board members?
Don't you all look at me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just let you start
I
these
certainly
ones.
do. I just think it's wonderful. I'm glad you're working with themes. I love the independent reading. You know that I'm a big advocate of In the Middle, the reading and writing workshop, and writing about reading and letting kids select their own books, guiding them, yes. I just want you to know, when I did that back at, when I went to Bolick, there was not much except Atwell's book. And I had to make up sheets of characters, you know, round, flat. I had to do that myself. And just to see it all, it's just so nice. The book, you know, the list for the kids, I had to make that, type it up, and but it was wonderful. I never saw kids love to read as much. And when you said that they're enjoying reading, that my heart. I just love it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to get the books in the kids' hands.
I love it. I love it. They need to read books. I don't care what they are. I don't care if they're fiction, nonfiction, poetry, whatever. They need to read. And, you know, I'm never without a book. I left school one day, and on my way home, I left my book. And I thought, I'll be all right. No, I went back. I got my book and went home. I'm a big advocate of reading and writing, and I love to read. I always have. And it's wonderful to see. I'm so happy. Pleased.
I just wanted to add how amazing it is to have these current, new books and curriculum in our schools, because it's been a long time coming. And so the fact that we're able to do this for our students is very exciting. And I have a 4th grader at Richardson, and she is, out of my 4 children, has never been a reader. And I can personally attest to how this program has helped her love to read this year. So
Oh, that's wonderful. Gosh, that's wonderful.
thank you for everything.
Yep. You'd be surprised how many kids that I had come up to me and say, you know, I'm still reading, Mrs. White. Okay. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. It really is. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for giving up your evening to
Appreciate it.
help us appreciate this more, give us those resources. I really appreciated seeing that and understanding how it's being used in our classrooms. And I think that 98% of students had growth. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's
amazing. We
wonderful.
have to celebrate that. You know, we've talked about other measures, because the state report card is one measure and it's meant to be punitive, but no matter what that says, when that comes out, 98% of kids in this program show growth, and nobody can take
Because
that
they're
away from
reading
us.
actual books.
Yeah, so that's amazing, and
That's
it's
fine.
important information.
Yeah. No, I was just going to echo that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. Okay. Last but not least, presentation number 6. It's a good one. Wellness and Success, Dr. Cruz.
Transitioning, I just wanted, we do have our 2 literacy specialists that will be on the board agenda for next time. So we are moving forward with that recommendation to you. So we were really excited. And we knew it was going to be a long night, so the props and the show and tell was a big hit. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Seifert, thank you. So Katie, can you just one quick little thing? Can you just remind us how many years you've been teaching?
Oh.
So we just love your enthusiasm and the way you were able to articulate all the connections around literacy. And I think so much of that is attributed to the work of these 2 here and what they've done in their professional development and working with the teachers. So thanks to Dr. Seifert and Mrs. Halleck and Katie. We're really, really proud of you. Thanks for sharing that tonight. Thank you.
Dr. Cruz is being so kind, but we owe a lot of thanks to Dr. Cruz because we get endless support from her. So,
This is the 4th time I've cried today. It's been a big day. Seniors and thanks. All right. Well, wellness and success. More tears. Okay. So we there are 2 things, 2 areas of focus in our department, and that's literacy and the wellness and success of our students. And this tonight is just tonight's presentations, while they are certainly lengthy, they're really at the core of what we do in our curriculum department. So this is well, you're gonna I think I really enjoyed the presentation myself. So I'm gonna without further ado, here's Cameron, Mr. Cameron Lazar and Ms. Polly Merkel. I just pulled me out.
Well, good evening, President Gomez, ladies and gentlemen of the board. It's a pleasure to be here to present an update and status on our wellness and success. So introductions have been made, so we'll move on to the next slide, if that's okay with you. And it works. So just a brief overview of our agenda for this evening. Wanted to first give you a little bit of a history and a background, since we do have new board members. Congratulations to everyone. So give you a little bit of a history, where we're at. ICS stands for Integrated Comprehensive Systems for Equity, so we're going to give you a status update on that as well, which that contract we engaged in using wellness and success funds that Christy referred to in her 5-year forecast presentation. Talk a little bit about the Whole Child Project and some of that work that we've been engaged in this year, as well as dive into some student data and whole child supports. So here's a quick timeline of the history of wellness and success. Again, Christy referred to that first bullet point on there, which is the governor's allocation of wellness and success funds across the state and directly to us as a district. Really simultaneous to that allocation of funds, the district also began strategically planning the utilization of those wellness and success funds. So we created a core team that consisted of a board member and multiple individuals in the district to strategically plan the use of those funds. In the fall of 2020, we saw one of our first new expenditures utilizing those funds, which is contracting with the Integrated Comprehensive Systems for Equity, and I'll talk a little bit more about the history of that program and status update in the next few slides. Celebrating a new created position up here with me tonight, so gracious and blessed for our Coordinator of Wellness and Success, Holly Merkel, in the fall of 2020. And then also great appreciation to the board for that position and the addition of 2 new social workers in the fall of 2021, one for kindergarten through 5th grade and servicing our elementary schools, and the other for 6 through 12, servicing our middle schools and our high school. And we'll kind of give you a status update, anticipating here to come later in the slides. The last expenditure we wanted to highlight is contracting with Panorama to ensure the data-informed decision-making. We engaged in that contract in the fall of 2021, and we'll show you some of those results in the data slide. All right, so the first slide we wanted to show you, on the left there, you are familiar with Each Child, Our Future. That is Ohio Department of Education's strategic plan from 2019 through 2024, so it connects really well with the allocation of those wellness and success funds. And as you can see, Integrated Comprehensive Systems, which is the first topic that we'd like to highlight, is directly addressing the 3 core principles within Ohio's strategic plan, really highlighting that one component of equity. So we wanted to kind of highlight Integrated Comprehensive Systems and that contract that we engaged in first, because we know that that really ensures the foundation, building equitable systems to support all of the other additional supports and expenditures that we put into place to support the whole child. The data shows persistent inequities, inequitable outcomes for scholars in our district and throughout the nation. And to eliminate those inequitable outcomes, we must transform the system in which created them, from deficit-based to proactive asset-based systems, operations, and mindsets. The way to begin eliminating inequities requires a systems approach that is explicitly pragmatic. And this is that approach. So the systematic and pragmatic approach is defined within this framework. And I know it's a little hard to see, so I will highlight some of those steps. And I wanted to highlight and for you to notice kind of the multi-year strategic approach that is embedded in Integrated Comprehensive Systems for Equity. So you can see it's set up in 4 cornerstones over really a 3-year process. The first cornerstone really focusing on equity. Within that, you'll see modules that highlight the history of educational marginalization, shifting from assets-based to deficits-based language and thinking, engaging in identity development, both our own identities and the identities of others, applying some of the equity research, so really diving into what decades of research have shown us, sharing that, making that visible, and embedded into our culture, and then developing district-wide equity non-negotiables, and last but not least, conducting an equity audit, which really services as an accountability feature for the program in general. So we revisit that equity audit annually to ensure that we are making progress towards access and outcomes. Cornerstone 2, you see aligning staff and students. So back to that pragmatic approach, that systematic approach. Really, you see that starting in year 2, which is realigning staff and students aligned with our equity non-negotiables, and constructing co-plan to co-serve to co-learn teams. So that's really one of the main outcomes of this work, and that we can make a direct connection to Julie Halleck's 98% success rate is really a part of that cooperatively planning with teachers and co-serving and co-learning alongside of each other. Years 2 and 3, really Cornerstone 3 and Cornerstone 4, you'll see really transforming teaching and learning. So one of those buzzwords that we talk about from time to time, designing identity relevant or culturally relevant teaching and learning for all learners, that comes in years 2 and 3. And then also leveraging policy and funding. So to really culminate the entire process or progress that the district goes through, we align human resources systems, we leverage funding, we cross-check our policies and procedures to align with our equity non-negotiables that we agreed upon as a district, and create multi-year equity action plans. So that is a lot. I'll highlight a few things for you with kind of the brief history. So this is kind of a current status. Where are we at and what's happened so far with this process? So really it highlighted in 3 different areas: the training, explicit coaching, and pragmatic staff development. So the training is for the BLT, the Board of Education at the time, and district administrators in the fall of 2020, and that was considered Part 1 training, where Dr. Futura, one of the founders of Integrated Comprehensive Systems for Equity, trained us all virtually over 3 full days. So that included, again, all of those BLT members for each one of our buildings. Our Board of Education had an opportunity to participate, and all district administrators. And then comes that explicit coaching piece. So embedded into our contract with ICS is that each BLT, so all of those teachers and administrators, as well as our district office administrators, receive coaching quarterly from Dr. Futura and or Dr. Capper. So that's just to constantly have again, referring back to Julie and the literacy presentation, that coach alongside of you to walk through how things are rolling out in the building, which aligns with the pragmatic staff development. So each BLT, once being trained, actually rolls out all of those modules that we walked through in the previous slides for their building. So it's not the trainer coming in telling you something from an outside perspective. They really spend time each month preparing for the staff development and rolling out those modules, which started in the fall of 2021. And then here's just a zoomed in portion of kind of where we're at. So the founders of the program really promote kind of moving at our own pace and speed. So, but we are all very closely aligned. So we've walked through what you see there, step 1 or module 1, the history of educational marginalization. Step 2, which is the shifting from deficits to assets-based thinking. And where we're at right now is modules 3 or 4 predominantly across our buildings, as well as in district office. So talking about identity development, investigating our own identities, as well as the identities of others, and moving towards applying the equity research. That's it. Next, Holly will take over and engage in some conversations about the Whole Child Project.
So before I get started, I just want to apologize for the small PowerPoints. I see everyone else had nice, beautiful, in color papers to give you, but our treasurer sends out these emails
Being
about
fiscally responsible.
And I am a rule-bound
Kudos.
person, so I thought I was doing the right thing.
You
but
are.
If you would like them larger, just let me know. We can certainly
If
get
you
them.
could just email it maybe tomorrow,
Okay.
and then we can.
And then we can print it out large.
On your own
ourselves.
dime.
So I
Yes,
All right,
ma'am.
so we're gonna dive a little bit into this Whole Child project. We've been engaging with Summit ESC all year to kind of explore kind of how we implement and integrate the Whole Child framework into our district. So I think several of you have heard us mention this HOPE's Whole Child project. So we thought we'd dive a little bit deeper tonight just to give you a context for the training that we went through. So it was a year-long professional development series. We engaged and worked with 3 other districts, and we attended 5 sessions where we really learned what the Whole Child Framework was all about, how do you implement it, and plan for it in your districts in a strategic way so that it becomes sustainable and it's not just something that you start but you aren't able to continue over time. I could spend probably the rest of the night, I know we've been here a long time already, diving into all the components of the Whole Child Framework. I'm sure you all have probably seen this before, but I just want to highlight two things. First, in the middle is the whole child, and then the 5 tenets that surround the whole child. And those are safe, engaged, supported, challenged, and healthy. So the idea with that is all the programming, everything that we're doing to support the whole child should really result in students feeling those 5 things. And then the second thing I'll just highlight are the 2 outer circles, family and community partnerships. And through this, we knew this, but through this project, it was really reinforced the importance of involving those stakeholders in this work. We can't do it alone. We shouldn't be doing it alone. And so bringing family and community partnerships as a part of this whole child work is critical. This next slide, again, I'm sure you have seen these pictures and lots of ODE publications, but on the left is the strategic plan Cameron had just mentioned. On the right is some different funding and initiatives that ODE had rolled out, success and wellness, you've heard a couple times tonight, K-12 prevention, but really where they meet is in the middle in this whole child framework. So we just wanted to kind of help connect the dots as to how the whole child framework fits into ODE's kind of shared vision for what schools, the work schools should be engaging in. So a large piece of this whole child project that we worked on, and I should have mentioned, the facilitator is a professor at Wright State University, and he's very active in ODE's Whole Child Advisory, Dr. Lorson. And so one of the things he spent a lot of time working with us on is sustaining these whole child efforts, getting a system in place so that if I disappear or Cameron disappears, the work will continue on. And so we spent a lot of time just kind of outlining our structure. Who's going to be the whole child liaison? Who's going to be our whole child core team? And then working towards developing an advisory council. So luckily I got to be the whole child advisory, which I loved because I got then coaching with Dr. Lorson outside of the sessions. So I'm excited to take on that role. Our whole child core team is those folks that were participated in the training this year, and then we're going to add some more folks next year just to make sure that we have all the stakeholders that we need at the table. And they'll really be driving a lot of the work in the district. And then the Whole Child Advisory Council is really where we bring those outside stakeholders to the table, community members, families, students, so that we have voices from everybody weighing in and hearing what we're doing to support the whole child. So that's something we're looking to make sure is in place for next school year. We're having conversations about, is that a new committee, or do we already have some things in place that would be appropriate for us to tap that work into something else? We have a lot of committees and teams in this district, and so if we can pull on a committee that's already together rather than starting a whole new one, I think we're gonna probably go that route. So the last piece of just sustaining the work is making sure the process and the system is sustainable. So we've made a conscious effort to really connect our work this year with the OIP and disseminating information, for example, on panorama data through DLT and our BLTs, trying to link it with our district strategic plan, and then just coordinating with other district committees. So for example, Chef Bill Bailey is in charge of our district wellness policy, and so we were able to partner with him again so that we're not doing this similar work in silos, but we're all coming together to do the work as one. So kind of 4 takeaways on this slide, and then the next slide is the 5th takeaway. But these are the 4 main things we've learned from the Whole Child Project. And really that it's a process, right? I'll use an I statement. I am often one to want to jump just to fix problems. Like, let's just put this program in a place and it'll fix everything. But really what we learned through this is like, you have to go through the systems approach and getting buy-in and educating folks about why you're doing what you're doing. And that way it's sustainable versus just people getting initiative fatigue and not really buying into maybe what you're proposing. So I think that's been great learning for all of us. The second piece, you're going to hear me talk about a lot through the rest of my presentation, but really this shift in thinking from putting all your resources and supports in that crisis-driven, reactive support to students and trying to move upstream to more prevention focus, trying to prevent the problems from happening versus just responding when they do. That's not an easy thing to do, and certainly we need both proactive and reactive, but we're trying to put some resources into that upstream focus. So you'll hear more about that in a little bit. The next piece is just the time to do the work. We were really appreciative that the district gave us those 5 days to work with Kevin and the ESC to kind of work through, what does it look like to implement whole child initiatives. And it's easy to get caught in the day-to-day of the district work and the building work. And then there often isn't time for some of this. So it was really just great to have some time set aside, and we're hopeful to be able to continue to do that next year as well. And then lastly, I think something we as a district do very well, but it was reinforced, just this idea of partnerships and collaborations. We can't do it alone. We really need to be able to tap in to our partners and our families to help us with this work. And the last piece I think that we really learned was the importance of data. We talk a lot about data in education, but we, as part of this training, we dug into our data. We dug into information the state gives us about our students. We dug into attendance. We dug into the youth risk behavior surveys, just to try to identify what are some of the key areas of concern. And not surprising, social emotional wellness and mental health kind of rose to the surface. So one of the things we did was we engaged in conversations with our school counselors, our school psychs, and our administrators about different options for us to gain information about student voice, where our students are at, where they're struggling, and we looked at different surveys we could give them, and we landed on Panorama. So I'm going to dive a little bit into the weeds on the Panorama data. We can get real into the weeds, but I tried to keep it higher level tonight, but if you have additional questions, certainly there's a lot of reporting features that we can get you. So before I dive into the survey content, I just wanted to say one of the reasons we picked Panorama is that it's evidence-based. So all of the questions that are established are really rooted in research. It also provided us an opportunity to ask a variety of questions. There were just a ton of topics that we as a district could pick, so we liked that we could customize it to really get the data that we felt like we needed to hear and wanted to learn from our students about. And finally, the part that Dr. Cruz sold me on, I didn't know, but I love that it's nationally normed. I didn't know that I would want that so much, but it's like the best part of the program. So that way we can compare ourselves to other students. I mean, it's one thing to say 50% of your students are struggling with challenging feelings, but what does that really mean compared to other students? So we'll dive a little bit into that. All right, just to give you a context, in case folks aren't familiar with the survey we gave to our students, we gave it twice this school year. We gave it once in the fall semester and once again in the spring semester. Students in grades 3 through 12 completed a survey. Our students 3 through 5 answered a 31 question survey, and our 6th through 12th graders completed a 34 question survey. And we chose the 5 competencies and well-being areas based again on collaboration with our school counselors, school psychs, administrators, and really felt these very nicely aligned to the ODE SEL standards, and really could keep us focused on gathering that information about our students' well-being and social emotional health, which were our primary areas of concern. So we'll dive a little bit into the data. I broke it down by grade bands. So this is students in grades 3 through 5. These are the spring results, but you will be able to reference the winter results as I walk you through this. So the first column where it says topic description lists the 5 topics, and then there's just a little sentence underneath each one describing what the questions are asking. The second column is the results. So each question the students answered on a 5-point Likert scale. And so according to Panorama, any student that answered a 4 or a 5 answered favorably. So when it says 49% of students with the challenging feelings, that means 49% of those students responded with a 4 or a 5. And then the last, well, before I move on, and then you might see that little arrow with the 1 going downwards. That is the comparison to the winter survey. So in winter, 50% of our students, 3 through 5, rated themselves favorably. In the spring, it was 49. And then the last column is the national benchmark. So for challenging feelings, we were in the 40th percentile. I'm a visual learner, so I like the bell curves, but that can just put in perspective in terms of where our students rated themselves compared to others. In your packets, you have these bell curves for every topic. For the sake of time, I did not put them in the presentation for tonight, but you have them for your reference. I will walk you through the rest of the results just to kind of give you a context. So for emotion regulation, 43% of our students rated themselves favorably. That's down 3% from the winter survey, and that put us in the 30th percentile nationally. For positive feelings, 67% of students rated themselves favorably. That was down 2% from the winter screening, and that put us in the 50th percentile nationally. Self-management, 74% rated themselves favorably. This was up 1%, and that put us in the 70th percentile. And social awareness, students rated themselves, 69% of them rated favorably, and that was down 2 points from the winter, and that put us in the 60th percentile. All right. So this looks at our 612 results. Again, same categories, same questions, just they were adapted a bit for our older learners. For challenging feelings, I'll give you the bell curve because I like my bell curves. For challenging feelings, 44% of our students rated themselves favorably, and unfortunately this put us in the 10th percentile nationally. But that was actually up 2% from the winter screening. For emotion regulation, 42% rated themselves favorably. That was no change from winter, and that put us in the 30th percentile. Positive feelings, 53%, up 3 points, and that put us in the 40th percentile. Self-management, 69% rated favorably, no change from the winter. That put us in the 40th percentile. And social awareness, 60% rated themselves favorably, no change from winter, and that put us in the 20th percentile. The last piece of data I'll share with Panorama is my favorite, the heat map. This provides a nice overview of all of the buildings in the district and how they rated on the certain domains. So if you kind of go down from the columns, you can see how the buildings compare to others, and then if you go across, you can see how the building did in each one of the categories. So when our core team analyzed the data, one of the things that we really spent some time talking about is the buildings are actually more similar than we often think they are. We sometimes talk about how different buildings are and whatnot, but I read this as our students' voice is really saying they're more similar than they are different. So all of these results I think I mentioned were shared out at DLT, and then with the idea that they'd be the information would trickle down to BLTs. I know I went to a couple BLT meetings at different buildings to try to just help explain the data and answer any questions. So nice way just to try to get this information out to our staff. All right, the last piece of data I will present is on signs of suicide. This is a evidence-based suicide prevention curriculum that's embedded in our health classes, grades 7 through 12. This has been embedded in our district since I've been here. It's ODE recommended. It's one of the approved programs for House Bill 123. So it's a very solid program that's implemented nationally. We did recently get the results for our district, and we wanted to share them. So I will say we're doing a lot to address this, so there might be initial concern, but just hang in there and we'll tell you everything we're doing to address it. So Signs of Suicide, it's a 2-day programming, like I said, in health classes. They do psychoeducation about depression, suicide, what to do if you feel like you're struggling with depression, or how to help a friend, trying to build some of those resiliency factors. And at the end of that program, they do, and I say they, Greenleaf Family Center comes in and administers this. Their certified prevention specialists come in and help us with this. So they administer a self-assessment to our students. This is optional. Students do not have to take it, and it's anonymous. And so the results of our self-assessment this school year are as follows. In our middle schools, we surveyed 278 students. Remember, again, this is in health class, so those students took it as a part of that course. 36% of the responses indicated the student had significant signs of depression. 17% of the responses indicated possible thoughts of suicide. For our high school, 271 students took this self-assessment in health. 32% of the responses indicate significant signs of depression, and 23% indicate possible thoughts of suicide. So those, of course, are very alarming numbers. They unfortunately are not out of line with what's going on nationally pre-pandemic. We knew about 19% of our students, this is nationally, not just our students, but nationally, 19% of high schoolers had considered dying by suicide, and 37% of students were experiencing those significant signs of depression. So that was pre-pandemic, and we know things have only intensified. Surgeon General just put out that warning for youth mental health. And so while this is very concerning, unfortunately we're not alone in this. In talking to Greenleaf, who goes into most of the districts in Summit County, he said our scores and results are in line with similar districts. So just keep that in mind, that yes, we're gonna do things to address it, but we're not alone. We're not an outlier in any way. I also wanted to highlight, after the Signs of Suicide program, students are provided the opportunity to meet with a school counselor and a school social worker. If they have concerns about themselves, they have concerns about a friend, family member, they're provided access to those support persons. So it's not just like we're giving them this information and then not providing the necessary follow-up. All right. So that was student voice, student data. Now we get to dive into the fun stuff I like to talk about, which is what are we doing about it and what are we going to do about it? So I just mentioned the Surgeon General's report. One of the things that they recommend, well actually I'm going to tell you 3 things they recommend, which are nicely aligned with what we're doing. Expanding social emotional learning programs and other evidence-based approaches to promote healthy development. Learn how to recognize signs and changes in mental health and physical health among students, including trauma and behavior changes. And provide a continuum of supports to meet students' mental health needs, including evidence-based prevention practices and trauma-informed mental health care. And then lastly, expand school-based mental health services and personnel. So that's what the government's telling us we should be doing, and I hope that you'll see some overlap with what we actually are doing. So this school year, we were really excited to offer 2 new embedded student supports, The first of which was the social work department, which Cameron mentioned. We were able to onboard 2 social workers this year. And we really designed the department off of the national school social work model, which says that they should be providing services to students, families, and then also school personnel into the district. And then a second piece of that is really linking with the community and finding resources and helping bridge that gap between what our families need and what's available in the community. So I'm going to give you some data to show you what services they've been providing, but I also just wanted to highlight some of the things the department's done in terms of that school community liaison, developing a school social work website littered with resources, and then also a fall's resource brochure, that's accessible to our families. So we pulled some data just to kind of take a look at how the social workers are being used and how they're spending their time. So for our one elementary school social worker, keep in mind she's servicing 6 buildings, she had 532 sessions so far this school year. I will say the numbers are not going to all add up, because when she does her notes, she can click a couple different things. So she might be providing individual counseling and also talking to a parent. So the percentages and numbers don't all add up, but we wanted just to give you a global sense of like how she's spending her time. So if there are any math people in here, I wanted to make that perfectly clear. And there's about 15 different options they can check when they're writing their note in terms of what activity they performed with that student or family, but we just pulled out the top 6, again, just so you could get a general sense. So of her 532 sessions, most of her time is being spent with students and individual counseling, supporting that mental health need. You can also see 202 parent contacts, so that may be a phone call, that may be a home visit, maybe a dojo, an email, those types of contacts with parents, making sure they're a part of what's going on with their child at school. 67 crisis intervention sessions, so that might be a suicide assessment, a student who's at risk to themselves or others, and Sierra being pulled in to try to help de-escalate and assess the situation. Attendance supports as well. Again, that may include home visits or just trying to figure out how we can reduce barriers and get students in our classrooms. And then that consultation and collaboration was another huge piece. Again, that service to school personnel in the district. It's not just about servicing the students, while that's the priority, but it's also about helping our teachers navigate all the mental health that they're dealing with in their classrooms, and really sort of them being that embedded support for our teachers as well as our students. The other thing just that's I think worth noting, the 532 sessions is a little misleading, because you could have a session for 10 minutes or you could have a 3-hour session. So the number is what it is, but we wanted to just at least throw some data out so that you would have a context. I love my social workers, so this is a brag moment for me, but we reached out to the principals for just any feedback on how social work was going in their buildings, and I received this from an elementary principal. So I wanted to share it because I think the data says one piece of things, but there's a whole nother layer of how are they engaging with our students, with our families, with our staff. And so this is what one elementary principal had to say. Sierra has been a huge asset to us. She goes above and beyond to support her families and staff. Her ultimate goal is to always promote student growth and achievement. Sierra has a whatever it takes attitude. She will work with any student, always willing, always working hard to help them grow. Sierra believes that every individual can continue to grow no matter what. In my opinion, this is the most important asset that a school social worker can possess. Lastly, Sierra is a wealth of knowledge and always has a solution or resource to support students and their families. All right, moving to our secondary social worker. She hit the ground running, right? The secondary folks were familiar with having someone like this in a position. The elementary folks, it took them a little bit longer to understand how to really use her and how to make a referral. So her referrals first 9 weeks versus now are off the charts. But Alyssa, our secondary school social worker, was able to really hit the ground running. So she had, so far, 1,188 sessions, primarily of individual counseling. She did some small group at some of the middle schools. She said 71 crisis intervention sessions, 112 attendance supports, 152 consultation collaboration with school personnel, and then again that 297 parent engagement, really focusing on bringing those families into the conversation so they're aware of what's going on with their child and they can help be part of the solution. One thing I wanted to say a couple slides ago, but I forgot, is they've also used this data to try to create some innovative programming. So Sierra recognized, with the help of Chris Shaw actually at the board office, that we have a lot of kinship care families, right, who are sort of just out there trying to navigate the system. So Sierra developed a whole resource guide for kinship care families, and she's started a grandparents group where they come in and they're able just to talk and support each other. And so that's something we hope to build on next year. Alyssa recognized that transition from 8th to 9th grade is rough, and our data certainly supports that. So she's reached out. She's at the middle schools, but she's worked with those teams to identify, 10 students from each middle school that could really use just developing that relationship with her, so that when they come to the high school, they already have that safe person. They have someone they can go to when they have questions or they're having a rough day. So really helping bridge that gap. So those are just, I could go on, but those are just two examples, I think, of ways they've been able to innovate and fill some gaps. So I couldn't share one quote about Sierra, not Alyssa. So I received this from a principal as well. Mrs. Hicks has been a positive addition to our guidance department. She has the ability to make everyone, staff and students, feel comfortable in her presence through active listening and a timely, responsive action. From the start, she worked hard to learn our systems, respect our procedures, and work within the structures for the benefit of our students, families, and staff. She has gained the respect of those that work closely with her through a team approach and an all-in attitude. From greeting our students every morning and often between periods, to asking what she can do to help when stressful and challenging situations arise during the day, I know that I can depend on Mrs. Hicks to do whatever needs to be done to create a positive school climate. All right, moving on to our next embedded student support that we were able to add this year, and that is Red Oak Behavioral Health. They are a school-based mental health agency out of Akron, but they have clinicians in a variety of school districts in Summit and I think some other counties as well. So currently we have 4 licensed therapists that are embedded in our 9 buildings. So that embedded piece was very important to us. We put out an RFP last year to all the local mental health agencies, and Red Oak really rose to the surface in terms of their willingness to be in our buildings bell to bell to provide that mental health services when it's needed, and really having them be a part of our Black Tiger family. And the feedback I've gotten from buildings has been really, really positive. They really appreciate having those folks in the buildings helping with the students on a daily basis. So the data as of May 16th, 192 students have received services, 324 have been referred. So if you compare that to previous years, that's a 460% increase. We were averaging about 70 referrals each year. So it's a big change. And I will just point out, Cindy Smith, sorry Cindy, I gotta put you on the spot. She is their manager of therapy services. So she's here just to support tonight, so. We're getting to the end, I promise. So, we gave you all that data. We know there's a lot of work to be done. Here are some of the things we're gonna be doing next year. We're adding one elementary school counseling position. We recognize to go upstream, we have to have the ability to implement tier 1 social emotional supports at the elementary level. If we wait until middle school, high school, you know, we've lost a really valuable time. So we're hopeful that the addition of that position will be really beneficial to reaching all students. Again, focusing on that evidence-based tier 1 supports, our K-8 school counseling team is currently investigating evidence-based resources. Right now, everyone's doing great work, but what the middle school is using may be a little bit different from what the elementary is using. So using this comprehensive school counseling plan as the basis, they're all gonna come together, I think next week, and we're just gonna kind of hash through what are some resources folks would like to have so that whatever they're learning, and the language they're learning in elementary school will then carry over to what they're learning in the middle schools. We're also super excited about Sources of Strength. I don't know if anybody has heard of Sources of Strength, but it's a youth-led prevention programming. It is also one of the House Bill 123 approved programs, so we're ahead of the game. We will be implementing that at the high school next year. And it's really about building resiliency and hope factors in youth. One thing we know from the research is that explicit SEL skill building is important in the early grades. It's not so effective as the kids get older. And what is effective is youth-led prevention. The kids will listen, obviously. We know teenagers, they'll listen to each other far more than they'll listen to us as adults. So using that youth-led prevention to do some of that work at the high school level. And then we'll also be adding Ruling Our Experiences. This is a 20-week curriculum for young ladies. So we'll be doing that at our middle schools and high school. We will be working with Engage Ohio. I know the board's certainly familiar with some of their programming, so we really hope to tap in to that next year for some of our students who have kind of disengaged from learning, and that'll help us hopefully get those students back in our buildings. And then we're, you know, an ongoing effort is really making sure that you've heard me mention House Bill 123 multiple times, but there are several components that we will be required to implement in the next year or so. So we are constantly working on those, and one of them is making sure that we have the threat assessment teams ready to go for March of 2023. Part of our whole child work has really been strategic professional learning for our staff this year. Each professional learning day, we have had sessions really targeted on whole child. So we've had question, persuade, refer. That's a gatekeeping suicide prevention professional learning. We had a professional session on supporting LGBTQ+ youth. Panorama did a session on social emotional learning. We've had a couple mental health sessions, trauma-informed schools. So you get the picture, but Dr. Cruz has been amazing this year in making sure that whole child is represented on our PD days. Some other ongoing work we're engaging in is collaboration and coaching with Montgomery County ESC. They are sort of the state leaders in trauma-informed social-emotional learning, so we have just really gained a lot from collaborating and learning from them, and we're excited to continue that moving forward. We'll be engaging in a systems simulation with our admin team coming up here. We're excited about this. We did this as part of our Whole Child project with Dr. Lorson, and it was so powerful, and we refer to it all the time, like when we're having conversations about how do we roll this out. And so it was so impactful for us, we thought we have to bring this back to the team. So that's coming up. We're excited about that. And then we were awarded the Attorney General Safety Grant to really continue professional learning focused on mental health. So one of the things we're working on is bringing youth mental health first aid to the district and just some other mental health educational opportunities for our staff. Last slide, I promise. When I started, I mentioned the 2 outside rings, which were family and community partnerships, and that's how I'll kind of end the presentation. We wanted to highlight some of those that were started this year and that we hope to continue to build upon next year. So the Ben Curtis Family Foundation, this year they have donated 5,500 birdie bags to students. 250 students in our buildings receive monthly birdie bags. so that we know that they're going home with some food, toothbrush, toothpaste, all of those things. This is very exciting. So the Fresh Farms, the high school Fresh Farms, came to us and they're like, hey, can we partner with you? So they're going to be including items from their farm. So our families, along with recipes on how to use the produce, that will be going home with families as well. Hopefully, maybe even as soon as this summer, but certainly for school year 22-23. We were able to join the Summit County ESC crisis team and engaged in prepared training. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but that's so the gold standard for crisis intervention and response when there's a crisis in schools. So it's by the National Association of School Social Workers, or National Association of School Psychs, excuse me. They put that out, and it's a really great program, so we're pleased to be a part of that. We were able to join the Summit County McKinney-Vento Consortium to help really pull our resources and do a better job of supporting our families who are experiencing housing instability. We'll be working with Graduation Alliance to really support those students who are struggling with attendance and who are academically at risk. And then, working with Akron Children's Hospital regarding the grant application that they've submitted. So that was a ton of information, so I apologize. But what questions do you have for us?
I know that I have a lot of questions, but I anticipated having a lot of questions. So I reached out to Dr. Cruz already, and we're going to set up a time to meet summer, being like late June or sometime July, and talk about that. And so if you have something you need to ask about tonight, please feel free to. If you want to reach out with questions, concerns, comments, please feel free to. But as your student wellness and success liaison, if you want to send some of those to me and I can take them to that meeting, feel free to do that. Whatever works best for the rest of all of you.
I'd just like, could you quickly explain, I don't know if you can, the shift from deficit thinking to asset-based thinking?
Cameron will be much more articulate.
For some, maybe people don't know what that means. I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, certainly. No, wonderful question. Thank you for asking. So really, it's a paradigm shift really based on the marginalization of specific identities. So these disproportionate outcomes that I referred to based on specific identities. So that could be ethnicity, that could be socioeconomic status, that could be race. When we start to look at our data, we see these disproportionate outcomes. And part of that through this program really highlights the history of marginalized groups through our educational systems and the perpetuation of that. So what that's founded on and the justification for why that exists is that we operate deficit-based systems that were really designed to benefit a normed group, right? So from the early stages of our educational institutions, they were designed to be successful for a very specific identity, right? And other identities were literally not allowed to participate. So what our history shows us is that education hasn't transformed much since those early stages. So that's kind of like the foundation that educational systems were designed as a deficit-based system, meaning that we try to identify where the gaps are, and we do that naturally. Like, what's wrong? Where's the problem? Where's your deficit? And we try to now fix it through a system that we've created by pulling students out of the core of teaching and learning to provide them with necessary supports with the intention to help close those gaps. The interesting thing is that through the lens of time, you can see as students get pulled and the students that have the most significant needs have the most fragmented educational days. So you can see you start to identify in these certain categories with deficits in language, with deficits in ability. Now you're being pulled out for this, and then you're being pulled out for this. So you have a fragmented day that is really difficult to bring that back and sustain in the general education setting. So you see those gaps continue to grow and perpetuate over time. So the idea is to really change the lens through education for educators to not consistently look for those deficits, but instead look at what we all want to be looked at for, which is our assets and the benefits that we bring to the table. So for example, a linguistically diverse family, instead of saying, oh, you don't speak English, let me help you, let me fix that, we say, what a beautiful opportunity to help embrace all of us into your culture and experience. So, sorry
thank
for
you.
my long
No,
response.
no. Well, thank you. And I had one other question. Holly, you said that the kids, did they have to take that suicide survey? It was optional. If they wanted to. So I guess I'm hoping maybe some of the kids that, I don't need that. I'm hoping that might be the case and it's not so bad as what the numbers said. Thank you. All right. I'm just hoping. Might be true. I don't know.
No question, I just want to thank you all for the work you're doing, staff across the board. I lost my little cousin, middle schooler, to suicide probably about a month ago, and it's tough, and these kids are hurting, staff's hurting, and it's folks like you who are addressing that and trying to get to the bottom of it, so thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank the board for this, all the support that you've allowed us to work with.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate. Okay. On to item E, Treasurer CFO's business consent agenda. Ms. Stoikoi.
Me again. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the treasurer's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Any questions, comments?
Nope, the alternative tax budget is just something we are required to approve for the library. They're just on it's very similar to the one we do. We do ours in January, they do theirs now. So, that, and we had a handful of donations again, which we always appreciate.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye. Item F, Treasurer CFO's business. Ms. Stoikoi.
I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the April 2022 investment schedule and monthly spending report.
So moved.
Second.
Comments?
I won't go into anything really here. Pretty much everything, most of it I talked about in the forecast. Food service is sitting in a great spot. I mean, I think they ended this month with 600,000. They're up higher than that at this point. So, I keep telling Bill now I feel like you owe me money back, but he's not going for it. So, and athletics is in the same thing. They're in a good situation, and everything else has pretty much been status quo.
You mentioned that one new report you did.
Oh yes, that's right. I forgot that was on this. So there's one new report, the State Share Monthly, and what that is I mentioned we received our first drawdown from the state for their share of the building project. So you can see the expenditures we've made, not many, and then the drawdown we received in April for about $800,000, and where we're at. So that finally has some more significant activity than just the little expenditures. So you will see that now in addition to the local share and the LFI.
Any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Item 2, your comments.
I'm good.
You're good. All good. Thank you. Item G, Superintendent CEO's business by consent agenda. Mr. Chabity.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda.
Oh, so moved.
Second.
You got me.
Comments? I want to highlight a couple things because there's a lot of good in all of this. I want to give our best to Courtney Rubino, who's leaving for a new opportunity after 24 years. She's an accomplished educator. Has made a huge impact in this district. So our best to her and her new adventures. I counted, we're approving 273 graduates on the list that was presented to us. It's always exciting, as well as an honorary diploma that we'll present to Liebert Bazzelli, which I think is even more important after the loss of his wife this past week. So that's really going to be wonderful. This Boys and Girls Club partnership is incredible. Another piece coming from here. We're 612 literacy, amazing. And then last but not least, our new coordinator of community relations, Christine Stewart. So And I told her after we vote, we'll let her say a few words, especially since she sat through all of this.
I'll make a presentation.
Okay.
Oh, man.
That's number 7.
Oh.
Others? Anyone else? Okay. Please call the roll.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Yeah. Lucas will say, because that's the only way that we'll record your comments, so in his absence, I'll say it for him.
Well, I would like to thank the Board of Education and Dr. Selico and everyone who was part of the team who interviewed me and gave me a chance, quite frankly. I know I probably had the odds stacked against me being a teacher and not somebody who has a marketing degree or has a communications background, but I'm glad that I was able to present my passion for the school district, and I was able to show faith that I can do great things for this district. And what's kind of fun is my dad's here with me tonight, and he is a 65 alumnus when this building was new. And now I get to represent the school district moving forward in a new building and coming up with a comprehensive plan. And actually, my mom is listening at home right now, and they met here. She asked them on the Sadie Hawkins dance for their first date. And so there's a lot of background. I may not have graduated from high school from here, but I've been a teacher here in this district for 21 years. And I know the schools, I know the teachers, I know the counselors and the administrators, the custodians, the cafeteria workers, the administrative assistants, the bus drivers, the maintenance workers, and most importantly, all the education acronyms. And I won't have to Google all those acronyms, at least not too much. And I look forward to collaborating with everybody, with Dr. Selico and the Board of Education and all of our staff to create a cohesive plan to communicate with our families and the taxpayers in the community to demonstrate how we are the hub of this community and how we can highlight every student every day with every opportunity. Thank you so much.
And I know Melody Carlisle couldn't be here, but she'd want me to say, welcome to the dark side.
Yeah.
She told me that last night.
Yeah, that's what they told me. It's not that bad.
Thank you, we're very excited.
I know.
Item H, Superintendent CEO's business, Mr. Shabady.
Request the first reading of the student handbook for Bullock Middle School and Roberts Middle School. There's just a few changes highlighted there for you to see.
Thank you. And if you have board members who have questions, comments, concerns, commendations, you want to send those to Dr. Cruz sooner rather than later, so that way they can make changes if needed and we can approve it at our next meeting.
Perfect.
And your comments?
Just a couple things. I had an opportunity today with the cabinet members to go to the National Police ceremony. It's National Police Week, and today was National Police Day. It was a touching ceremony, and we enjoyed going there and hearing that program. I'd like to wish all the best and safe time for all of our graduates. And last, I'd like to compliment Dr. Selico. I've had a chance to speak with her weekly. Sometimes I can't catch up with her because she's meeting with other people, but she's really, we talk about hit the ground running, laying the groundwork, meeting community, staff. So I've been very impressed with her efforts, and I think it's going to pay off dividends for the district. So thank you.
Thank you. Item I, board business. Number 1, resolution to waive school classroom/educational fees for the 2022-2023 school year. It's recommended that the Board of Education waive the student class fees that were approved at the May 18th, that's right now, board meeting for the 2022-2023 school year to be paid for with federal funds with the following exceptions: pay to participate fees, career and technical education fees, senior graduation fees, and parking permits.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I just remind people that even for fees that aren't waived, if people experience hardships, we have policies in place. They just need to reach out to our treasurer's department and make sure that they take advantage of those if needed.
Great.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Thank you. Number 2, policy first reading. We have a number of policies up for first reading that we reviewed at our policy committee meeting. Most of them are very minor adjustments, and you'll see that the 2 that we spent more time on are student conduct on district managed transportation. We revised their revisions to better suit our school district, and then the other one is library materials, and that came from our media specialist through Mr. Hutch on their recommendations on changes there. If you have any questions or comments, reach out to Ms. White or I before next meeting. Otherwise, we'll approve them at the next meeting. Number 3, emergency levy. This was requested by Ms. Stoicoy, so I'll turn it over to you.
I just wanted to, briefly talked about it last time, gather the board's thoughts. Obviously, the emergency levy we have planned and will need to go on the ballot in November. So typically, those resolutions will be passed in the June meetings. They are due to the Board of Elections by the beginning of August. This is one that is a little different from our other ones. We cannot approve this for a continuing period of time. But we can approve it for, a different time period than 5 years. This is the last chance for us in November. If it doesn't pass, then we see a loss of revenue for a short period or a long period, depending of time. So I just wanted the board's thoughts on the length of time. Our plan as cabinet was to kind of run it the same way with a plan drawn out that we did similar to the last one, with some of the things we'd like to accomplish with this money going forward for whatever time period that is. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you think.
What is your recommendation on a length of time?
My initial thought is to just go with 5 to be safe. I know air conditioning is probably one of the big issues that's on there, so with that and that being a larger expense, it is possible. You could do 6, 7 years, but I would stay somewhere within that time frame.
My personal recommendation would be to stay with the amount of time that we currently have, seeing as we just passed a continuance levy, in good faith with our community and everything else. I think keeping with the same amount would be a wise choice, especially if this is our last chance in November.
And this will give us, after this, a break in renewals until the
when?
24-25 school year. So in 24, would probably, calendar year would be the earliest. If I remember exactly when that's up, that we would do the 7.9. So you get a 2-year break.
I would agree that with the 5 years as well, just because we run this one in such a different way, I think continuing to go for continuing when the other ones come up that are basic funding, it seems that was successful. But this one, because it's so different, I think, and it's the last chance, 5 years makes sense. I would just say the one thing I think we learned from the plan in 2017 is to not be overly specific. That came back to bite us a little bit. I think more buckets of money, general ideas, but I would encourage us not to be overly specific, because 1, it wasn't always beneficial, and 2, I don't get comments from people in the community like, did you buy 2 buses every year? Because that wasn't, so I don't think the work that we're putting into it is paying off in that sense with the community either.
My suggestion with that would be to also highlight, and Ms. Stewart's still here?
No.
To highlight what was done with the emergency levy that was when it was passed.
So that is all out, available on the
It is.
website, under my section of the website, on the treasurer's page. So it is available out there. And then typically, like this fall, I would do the update on, like the yearly update on what we've spent it on, and probably in a similar fashion, because that's usually like in September-ish, perhaps roll out what the next 5-year plan kind of would look like then. Because going into next year, it's only a half-year collection that was planned for, so that other half would have to jump in there with this renewal. And we certainly have taken some detours. But good, I mean, for the intended, I mean, Schnee was one of them. The Silver Lake Playground, I mean, things that were definitely beneficial and needed, and along the same vein of what it was passed for.
And then sometimes things cost a lot more than what we thought they would be. We discovered that as well too. So I think that's that idea of, we want to give people a direction of what the needs are, but not to maybe throw exact dollar amounts like we did that. Yeah, we learned that the hard way, I think, together. Other thoughts? I know Ms. Stoikley wants to hear at least 3 people
Okay,
agree with the 5
I will
years.
jump in then and save the 5 years. I think we should stay there.
Okay, thank you for that. Sure
I know
will.
you're counting in your head to make sure there's majority support.
So I will move forward, and if I have them in time, we'll see that first one then on June 1st, and followed by, again, timing-wise, the second one, that second meeting in June, so we can get them to the auditor and ready to go. And I will reach out to our council to get those ready.
Thank you. Anything more on this board member? Okay. Move on to number 4, future agenda items. Does anyone have any future agenda items they'd like to bring forward?
Yes, the new website, when will we get something or a presentation on that? I'm not saying you have to do it right now, right, you know, I just
So
wondered.
I've got you the preview links, and we're still developing, so
Okay,
we should
yeah.
have something late. I'd love to do a presentation probably in July.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
Walking through what we've done.
Sure, that's fine.
I got
If
you on
that's-
for July.
If you
then.
think that's too early,
don't think
August
so.
even. Okay, all right, thank you.
That's exactly what I was going to.
Were you
mention
gonna-
I was.
Well, I told you about, John, what are some other things we have at the next meeting, from Dr. Cruz, and you can tell me if I miss anything, Dr. Cruz. But the federal fund presentation, gifted, 2-5 science materials, and then you had focus on the list, the piece of paper that you handed me.
Oh, yes, so just a reflection
On
on some of the feedback from the staff this year. We're gonna talk about that at DLT next week, and then just kind of wrapping up how the book study went.
Okay, thank you. And then sometime in July or August, Dr. Cruz is gonna have some exciting photos and stuff about summer school, July or August, that's down there. But because we're kind of doing it differently, and we're seeing, I did check in with her, we're seeing really good enrollment numbers. So we wanna kinda talk about how is this being successful, what does that look like, and once again, celebrate something we think is gonna be a big success. Also, our June 1st meeting, we need to talk about process for treasurer evaluation. I'll kind of give you a little rundown how we did that in the past, and then we'll need to meet at a meeting, an executive session, to have our conversation, and then at the next meeting we meet with our treasurer. So we'll talk more about that at our next meeting. I also want to let you know we have May Top Tigers, so we're having them all come to the June 1st meeting, so that they're not too detached from school and forget about it, so they can get that moment of celebration. And then sometime over the summer, we're going to talk about what we want that to look like for next year as well. So that's a lot, but I mean, I think you all know, we all know, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on.
Can we
Yes.
recognize the symphonic band or for their state competition?
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
She wants,
Oh, go ahead.
she wants to know if we can recognize the bands for all scoring a 1 at the state competition. It's the first time it's ever
I think
happened.
that's fantastic. Yes, we can do
Dr. Cruz will make that happen at some
Yeah,
point.
Okay,
awesome.
good idea.
Okay. Committee reports, 612 construction core team, Ms. White.
Yes, I want to apologize to our planning committee members and our other team members there because of a lot of miscommunication happened. And we talked a lot about communication and how we need to do better at that meeting. And I just really hope they will come tomorrow if they'd like to hear anything about what's going on and updates. So I would like to invite them all to come tomorrow. Basically, we did talk a lot about communication and some of the financial constraints. And the two things that I can point out, if I can find them in my notes here, on June 20th, the design development will be submitted. And then July 11th will be the early site work submitted. So they'll probably talk to you more tomorrow night about all of that. But those are just some of the highlights.
Great, thank you. Well, Alliance for School and Community Growth, Ms. Coco.
Yes, we met last week. It was the last meeting of the school year with everyone. And since my beginning with the committee and Mr. Shabady, we've had two new community members that are coming regularly and wanting to partner with our district. And I know with the presentation on wellness and the whole child, there are a lot of community people in that room that are already on board for being a part of a partnership with that. So I just wanted to mention that. And we have 3 members of that committee, or people that come to that committee, that have interest in joining the Business Advisory Council, which we desperately need moving forward. So that's exciting as well. So all good things.
Thank you. Athletics and Activity Council, Mrs. Schaefer.
We will be meeting on June 6th.
Okay. Board Policy Committee, I don't think we have anything else.
No, just the first
first
reads for you guys. Have fun.
Business Advisory Council, Mr. Harris and Ms. Coco.
May 24th, 8 a.m.
Financial Advisory Committee Representative, Mrs. Schaefer.
We met on the 12th, and I got to have a pre-presentation on this. So you'd think I'd just understand it a little bit more, but I probably watched it 3 times. It's a lot of it. We talked about levies, and we talked about the fire forecast and school funding. It's a lot of information. It's interesting, though.
Thank you. Foundation Alumni Association, that's me. Thank you all for coming to our award ceremony. It was very moving. I think it was, well, we met the next night and we said as a foundation that it was the best one yet. So it's officially the best one yet. But it was really wonderful and moving and just phenomenal. The foundation does want you to know that as board members, you're invited to walk with the Top Tigers in the parade next in 2 Mondays. If you'd like to, reach out to Gary Medkiff for that. We, at our foundation meeting, we talked about continuous improvement of the foundation, continuing to build off our success. And I'm going to embarrass Mr. Shabady because he was so moved by that he reached out and created a Shabady Family Scholarship. And so we are very appreciative of him. Legislative Liaison, Mr. Harris.
Yes, there's a lot. Mr. Hutch, you can put the presentation up. So I'll be brief. There's a lot happening in Columbus, obviously. Most of that was touched on this evening. House Bill 126, which Ms. Stoicoy had mentioned, that's the establishing restriction on school districts' ability to challenge property values, was recently enacted and signed by Governor DeWine. Will be taking effect. House Bill 619, these other bills and Senate bills I'm going to be talking about are just recently introduced and in the process. House Bill 619 allows districts to permit K-12 students to take up to 3 mental health days per year as excused absences or as in-school health program, and refer students who are using that mental health day to the appropriate health support services in their schools. House Bill 583 is a bill that is expected to move quickly as it extends the current flexibility for school districts to hire until June 30th, 2024. It's also going to establish a committee to examine the substitute teacher shortage. They're trying to get that in effect by next school year. Senate Bill 306 establishes a voluntary program to provide tutoring and remedial education services to students in public and private schools. This could be added to House Bill 583 for quick passage and will utilize retired teachers and subs. House Bill 606 requires school districts to create an individual plan for students who have active seizure diagnosis. Part of that is requiring at least one employee in addition to the school nurse to be trained to deal with seizure disorders. I'm still following House Bill 616. That is the divisive teaching, don't say gay bill. House Bill 327, which is similar, prohibits school districts and state agencies, among others, from teaching, advocating, or promoting divisive concepts. Almost similar to 616. I don't know what's going on there. It also will require districts to review diversity, equity, and inclusion training programs. House Bill 529 requires school districts, charter and private schools, and public colleges and universities that participate in College Credit Plus program to upload student instruction items to their websites by July 1st of each year, and those need to remain accessible for 2 years. That's curriculum, lesson plans, textbooks, worksheets, etc. House Bill 582 reduces terms for school board members. I mentioned that one last time, I believe, from 4 years to 2 years, and it sets term limits and repeals nonpartisan requirement. And provides primary election for school board elections. House Bill 290, backpack bill, or the new voucher program, eliminates Ed Choice voucher program and replaces with the backpack scholarship program, or a savings account for participating students to use for private school tuition, tutoring, textbooks, and other allowable uses. K through 8 students would receive $5,500. 9 to 12 would receive $17,500. Only received one hearing thus far, and I will continue to follow that. House Bill 99 requires boards, sorry, I'm almost done, I promise, requires boards to provide public notification if they authorize one or more persons to be armed within the school. With that, Senate Bill 168 requires statewide firearms training for school safety designees, and that is someone other than the school resource officer. House Bill 298 revises the composition of the 19-member State Board of Education, eliminates 4 of the 8 governor's appointed seats filled via executive appointment, and replaces with 4 seats with elected members. We are approaching a lame duck session. 135th General Assembly will be passing the budget bill very soon. Coming, after the election. That could throw a lot of things in for passage, and Ms. Stoyko mentioned that. Fair school funding plan, backpack bill. They could address teacher, bus driver shortages, and push through some of these complicated and politicized parental rights and curriculum restriction legislation. That's it.
Could you email that to
Yes.
us?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Late night, light reading.
Absolutely, yeah.
I wish our legislators had to sit through one of our meetings and understand what we actually do here in a district, and then look at the bills they're proposing and say, who do you think has the time to do this? Like, who has the time to do this stuff? We have other things that are more important that we're trying to do.
Right.
That's my high horse for tonight. Student Achievement Liaison, Ms. White.
We meet on May 23rd.
Thank you. Student Wellness and Success Liaison, that's me. Just remind you that if you want me to carry some of your questions, concerns, or comments, please feel free to let me know. And when I meet with Dr. Cruz later in the summer, because there's too much to do between now and mid-June, but I'd be happy to do that as well. Comments, Mr. Harris, you're up first.
Yes, thank you to all of the amazing retirees for their many years of service to the students and parents of this district and to the community as a whole. Congratulations to our top Tigers, and a special shout to Ms. Stoyko for her very informative 5-year forecast presentation, and the other dedicated administrators and staff who updated us this evening. I appreciate the time and energy each of you put into what you do here. Another congratulations to the graduating class of 2022. I know the last few years haven't been quite what you anticipated in a high school experience, but you made it, and each of you are stronger for getting through it. Great job, and I'll see you next week. Thanks to the staff and students at Lincoln for inviting us to participate in the Lemonade Day Loan Board. I had a blast, and I was very impressed by the students' presentations and business ideas. I see some future Shark Tank folks there. Great work, and I'm looking forward to trying some delicious lemonade on Lemonade Day tomorrow, 2 to 5 p.m. at Lincoln Elementary School. Also stopped by the Spring Sustainability Expo this past weekend. I continue to be impressed by our urban ag students and amazing work they're doing around our community. These partnerships are incredible. Also, I got to see the very creative environment-themed artwork by some of our elementary and high school students. So great job there. And I also attended, I'll finish up here, the Foundation Alumni Association Scholarship Award Ceremony. It was fantastic. Mr. Gomez, you were right. It was very moving and emotional. I really enjoyed that. And then lastly, Mr. Bugatti, I just want to give you and your entire team a shout out for all the above and beyond work you're doing for the district, driving buses on top of supervising operations, and many on your team doing that same work. So I just want to recognize all the work you're doing and say thank you for that.
Tell him you said so, and thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Mrs. Schaefer.
Well, I feel like I must have followed AJ around, the loan board, the first time I ever got to do that, it was super fun. Again, Shark Tank, it was great. Those kids were on point. The Lemonade Day is tomorrow. They said for community would be 3:30 to 5. We attended the board leadership training. That was great. I feel like I've already started kind of trying to incorporate some of the things that we talked about that I heard people talking about in sessions. The Cuyahoga School Foundation Alumni Recognition and reception for distinguished alumni and service awards and scholarship recipients. That was my first time attending that. It was really neat. I really enjoyed that. I got to help with the Preston Book Fair this week, or I should say last week. And while I didn't get to go to the art show because I was at work, I got like a kind of a private curation of the art show after hours. And I just love going to these art shows. The art show at the elementary school was great. Got some ice cream. So great. The things that these kids are doing in elementary art is so cool to me because there's so many different things that they're doing. They're working with clay, they're working with paint, they're working with crayons. I mean, there's such diversity in what they're doing, and I have to comment on what these art teachers are doing. They're just really doing a great job with these kids. It's super impressive. And then also went to this Spring Sustainability Expo at the Natatorium, and I got a chance to talk to Steve Newland about some of the upcoming projects that they're working on with the urban agriculture class. Super impressive. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to see what they're planning to do in the fall. Very excited. And that was my busy first 2 weeks.
Thank you. Ms. White.
Yeah, I don't have much except to say, I'd really like to thank the alumni and the foundation for doing what they do so well. It was wonderful. I don't have an article tonight because I knew it would be a long board meeting, so.
But
good.
Mr. Hutch covered you and he sent us one on Friday.
I know he did, yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Coco.
Well, I followed Mr. Harris and Mrs. Schaefer around a lot of places in the past 2 weeks as well, so I won't go back over all of them, but I'm just really excited that as a board we have the opportunities to be involved in so many different things in our district, and thank you to all of the administrators that are so welcoming to us and inviting us and communicating with us on these different events so that we can be a part of them. At our board leadership training, a lot of districts don't have that, and the board members are literally just sitting up in a meeting every 2 weeks and not really knowing what's going on in their schools. And so I just want to say thank you for the communication that we have in this district between all of us and the relationships that we have. I'm not going to go over anything everybody else said. 7 more days of school. We can do it, all of us. And just because school doesn't stop doesn't mean that a lot of the people in this room stop working. So thank you for all your hard work that you will be continuing to do while some of us are at the pool or somewhere else. So, please, if anyone's listening at home with students, the library reading program starts the same day that we get out of school. So please keep your students reading, because learning doesn't have to stop just because we're not in the buildings. So, thank you.
I'm up last. One of the things I like to do in my free time is try to keep up with our State Board of Education. And they made a big move and they hired a new state superintendent, Steve Dakin, who is a former member of the State Board of Education and was formerly the superintendent of Reynoldsburg before our own Melvin Brown went down to Reynoldsburg. And while Mr. Dakin made some decisions I didn't agree with in his time on the board, I really believe that he has a heart for students, and I think that's what we need to filter through with this whole child framework. So I think we will see good things with his leadership, and that's a cause for hope. I too got to go to Preston and Price, but I want to give a special shout out to Preston, where they had all the classrooms open and they were highlighting different projects that students were working on, so you got to walk through and see them. And my favorite was Mrs. Hammond, 2nd grade. She had the kids growing lima beans in wet paper towels, and they put them in bags and taped them to her window, and they were just growing. And then it happens to be that her daughter is a longtime family friend, so I was talking to her about that, and she said, like, her mom was, Mrs. Hammond was frantic because the store didn't have lima beans for her project, but she was able to find them. So just the above and beyond that they go through to make these opportunities happen for our students. The Spring Sustainability Fair is amazing. I was very happy to get a tomato plant and a pepper plant from them that I'm going to plant in my garden. Board Leadership Institute was great, and I think we got some good ideas that we're excited to talk about at our retreat coming up with Dr. Selico about moving our district forward together. And I also had it on my list to thank our maintenance and custodial staff, because they've been working with the Fresh Farm program and helping to implement these community learning gardens at some of our elementary schools. I know particularly Lincoln and DeWitt, and they're doing a lot of work to make that happen, while at the same time it seems that the grass is growing 3 inches every day, and they're trying to keep up with that as well. So my kudos as well to them. And item J, adjournment. It's recommended that we adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
45 minutes. That's my